Chapter 5200. Lin Yi said he was going to train Ziyu for 2 days, but it wasn't even 2 days and it was already time to draw lots. Didn't that mean that they'd forfeit and be eliminated? But it's too late now, right? Man, we've miscalculated. Yu Bing frowned. They should have realized this a long time ago, but because they trusted Lin Yi too much, they thought that something like this would be within Lin Yi's calculations. They forgot that the timing wasn't controllable, and even Lin Yi couldn't have predicted that it would be the Foundation Establishment Group's turn so soon. No matter what, I'll go find Boss and the others now. As long as I don't get the first match, it should be fine. My luck shouldn't be that bad, right? Chen Tian left. But before he could take 2 steps, Xanijia announced, Foundation Establishment Early Phase, First Match, Common Worlding Ziyu against Snow Sword Sex Luo Shaxing. Ha! What's going on? Chen Tian almost fell flat on his face, and Ling Shan and the others all had a pained expression on their faces. What should they do? At this time, Luo Shaxing was already walking onto the stage with a ferocious aura, looking at Ling Shan and the others with a vicious smile. He'd lost to Ling Shan's miraculous counterattack in the first round, and Ling Shan's attack had indeed hit his vitals, but it wasn't that heavy. Luo Shaxing had already recovered by the time the second round started, and he didn't meet anyone from Lin Yi's group in the next 3 rounds. Among all the Foundation Establishment disciples from the Archaic Alliance, Luo Shaxing's strength wasn't top-notch, but he was still a disciple of the Snow Sword sect who could control the snow aspect. His strength wasn't to be underestimated, and as long as his luck wasn't too bad, he could beat most of his opponents. But perhaps because of Ling Shan, Luo Shaxing's strength had recovered, but his condition was affected quite a bit. He won 1 and lost 1 in the next 2 rounds, and while he wasn't directly eliminated, he had 1 foot on the edge of a cliff. There was no going back now. What a coincidence. It's a shame that it's not Ling Shan, but at least it gives me a chance to get my revenge. I can't wait. Luo Shaxing looked at Ling Shan, a little regretful. He couldn't accept losing to Ling Shan like that in the first round, and he'd been dreaming of meeting Ling Shan again in the next few rounds, but he didn't have the chance. He could only vent his anger on Ziyu now. Ling Shan and the others glared at him furiously. If it weren't for the tournament, they'd definitely teach this guy a lesson. If it weren't for Ling Shan going easy on him last time, he'd be a dead man by now. How dare he talk big like that? That was what he said, but it'd be a lie to say that he wasn't worried at all. With Ziyu's performance in the last few fights, this Luo Shaxing wouldn't stand a chance against her, especially since this guy had a grudge in his heart. He wouldn't let Ziyu give up so easily. The tournament begins. Disciples, please enter the stage. Xanijia saw that Ziyu wasn't entering the stage, so he turned around to urge her, but he didn't see her anywhere. He'd been interacting with Ling Shan's group for the past few months, and he could still recognize her. He blinked, "Where's Ziyu?" Under normal circumstances, all the disciples would wait at the side, no matter if it was time to go up or not. Even if they won all 3 fights and got the right to go up early, other than the heavily injured ones, most of them would stay here to watch the others fight. This was the first time someone like Ziyu, who was clearly uninjured, had disappeared. Ling Shan and the others looked at each other. She's going back for a bit, but she'll be back soon. Please wait for a bit. Then. All right. Xanijia nodded. This might not work if it was someone else, but Ziyu was Lin Yi's follower. She was his senior master, after all, and he had to give her some face. Luo Shaxing snorted discontentedly, but he dared not say anything more. He was not a big shot like Xue Jianfeng. He was merely a disciple in the early stage of Foundation Establishment realm. How would he dare to put on airs in front of Xanijia, a gold core stage master uncle? Therefore, he could only endure it. Ling Shan and the others breathed a sigh of relief, quickly sending Qin Tian to inform Lin Yi and Ning Ziyu. However, this place was quite far from the Blue Cloud Sex Island, and they had to row a boat. They wouldn't be able to get there without 2 incense sticks worth of time. Even Axayanigia wouldn't be able to waste this much time, so he had to try his best. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the other disciples of the Archaic Alliance were getting impatient. If it was a big shot like Lin Yi who made them wait for so long, it would be understandable. However, it was just a weak little girl. Axayanigia, as the leader of the team and the judge, was being so biased. Wasn't he being too selfish? Master Axayan, we've waited long enough, right? If she doesn't come, are we supposed to keep waiting like this? Luo Shixing finally asked. Yeah, according to the rules, anyone who doesn't show up on time forfeits. Waiting for an incense stick's worth of time is the limit. The flowers will wilt if we wait any longer, the others all agreed. That's... Axayanigia looked at Ling Shan and the others, troubled. From his perspective, he had tried his best, and he could only give a helpless expression. Since that's the case, then I'll announce that Ziyu has been late for too long, and will forfeit. Before he could finish, Ziyu's voice came from not far away. Sorry, I'm late. That's great. Seeing Lin Yi and Ziyu appear together, Ling Shan and the others let out a breath of relief. Even Axayanigia was the same. Only Luo Shixing was a little disappointed. He wanted to use this chance to vent his anger on Ziyu, but in comparison, the test was more important. If he could win without any effort, then he'd be able to maintain his peak condition for the 5th round, and he'd have a much higher chance of entering the test. I'll be going then. Ziyu was no longer as nervous as before, smiling confidently as she raised her hand to Lin Yi. Okay, good luck. Lin Yi high-fived her. Chapter 5201. She's just a flower vase with no strength at all, where's that confidence coming from? Luo Shixing curled his lips in disdain. Ever since he lost to Ling Shan, he'd been paying close attention to Lin Yi's group. After all, they were very likely to be the opponents they'd be drawn against, and he'd seen their performance from start to finish. If it were Ling Shan and the others, he'd be worried, but since it was Ziyu, the weakest of them all, there was no need to worry. Ziyu will be fine, right? Ling Shan worried. She knew Luo Shixing's strength the best. He wasn't an easy opponent at the early phase of Foundation establishment. If she didn't fully grasp the counter moves Lin Yi taught her, she'd have a hard time. Ziyu, she... Lin Yi paused and smiled meaningfully. She's actually quite strong. Ling Shan and the others paused, looking at each other. Lin Yi's standards had always been very high, and he'd never even commented on their performance like this before. Could Ziyu be an unparalleled genius for him to say that she was strong? At this time, the battle officially started. What surprised everyone was that Ziyu didn't follow the tactics and counter moves Lin Yi taught them, choosing to go on the offensive right from the start. This scene didn't just surprise everyone, even Luo Shixing was shocked. But then he sneered. If you want to take the initiative, then you need to have the strength to do so. Do you have it? Luo Shixing smiled coldly, and his signature weapon, the slaughter blade, came slashing down. Ziyu, however, was expecting it and dodged to the side, throwing a punch at his face. Luo Shixing was shocked. Ziyu was hitting his life point. How was that possible? If it was the snow-killing style, the most famous style of the Snow Sword faction, it was still acceptable for someone to lock on to his vital point. However, the traceless snow that he was using now was just an inconspicuous style. How could this woman have predicted it? She couldn't say that it was her spontaneous reaction, could she? That reaction speed was just too astonishing. Moreover, could an ordinary person study the moves of the Snow Sword school so thoroughly? Even the disciples of the Snow Sword School themselves might not be able to lock onto the vital points of the moves so quickly, right? Luckily, Traceless Snow Ground's flaw wasn't as obvious as Snow Kill, and Luo Shaoxing quickly changed his move. Ziyu didn't, still hitting the same spot, but Luo Shaoxing easily blocked it. Does this woman not know how to be flexible? Luo Shaoxing paused, and before he could react, Ziyu followed up with another attack, this one even faster than before. But this time, she didn't lock on to the life gate. Luo Shaoxing quickly blocked again, but he didn't even have time to stop before Ziyu's third attack came even faster. She didn't lock on to the life gate as well, and it looked like a normal body part. Why did she choose such unimportant positions? What is this woman doing? Luo Shaoxing was a bit stunned. Ziyu's attacks were abnormally fast, but they were easy to block. There was no threat at all. It was just that he had failed against Ling Shan before, and even if Luo Shaoxing looked down on Ziyu from the bottom of his heart, he didn't dare let his guard down against this random series of attacks. With the mentality of playing it safe, he started to defend. 7 to 8 moves in a row was the same, and Luo Shaoxing was getting impatient. He'd seen through Ziyu already, and as weak as she was, everything before was just a bluff. With a thought, Luo Shaoxing started to counterattack, but before he could even do it, Ziyu was already going for his life gate. He almost pissed his pants, going back to his defensive stance. This is... Ling Shan was a bit weirded looking at Ziyu's actions. She seemed to be using the counter moves Lin Yi taught her, but not completely. Other than the first move and this one, the rest weren't specific to the Snow Sword sect. Other than the Snow Sword sect, Ziyu seems to be using the counter moves of the other ancient sects as well. Boss, what's going on? Yu Bing finally saw what was going on and asked softly. Chen Tian and the others came to a realization, no wonder Ziyu's moves looked so familiar. They were the moves of the ancient sects, but they were all mixed together, so it didn't look like they belonged to the same sect. As you can see, it's a mixed version of the ancient sect's counter moves. Lin Yi smiled. This was something he'd come up with just for Ziyu, since she'd shown that she was a test addict. Getting her to use a counter move on the spot like the others was a very hard thing to do, and so he came up with this idea. He didn't need to think too much about it, he just needed to use all the moves in the sparring, and it'd be much easier that way. But is this going to work? Ling Shan said, confused. Ziyu did seem to be able to scare the opponent, but she didn't hurt him at all. She'd be seen through sooner or later anyway, and this dance was just a waste of chi and stamina. She didn't see any chance of winning at all. Yeah, when you're not as strong as the opponent, it's very easy to see through Ziyu's moves, so you have to defend and counterattack. Isn't that what you taught us, boss? Chen Tian said. That's normal, but take a good look at Ziyu's movements. Lin Yi reminded. Everyone looked closely at Ziyu's performance, and Yu Bing reacted after a while. She seems to be lowering the power of her moves to increase her speed. More accurately, she has no choice but to lower the power of her moves. That's right. As the saying goes, there's nothing that can't be defeated by speed. Speed doesn't just refer to the speed of one's movements, but also the speed of one's attacks. When the speed of one's attacks reaches a certain level, the opponent won't be able to react in time, achieving the goal of attacking instead of defending. So, I taught her a whole new fighting style, Instant Strike. Chapter 5202. Instant Strike. Everyone was shocked. Yes, it's a fighting style that ignores everything else and focuses on speed. Once you get caught up in a fight like this, you won't be able to fight back normally. You'll only be able to attack halfway and the opponent will have already attacked. Lin Yi said. Wow, that sounds really strong. Everyone was shocked, but then they started complaining, boss is too biased, isn't he? He's only teaching Ziyu something this strong, not us. Ha, I can teach you anytime if you want, but it's just a fighting style. It's not suitable for everyone. Lin Yi said as he looked at Ziyu. He didn't know much about the others, but this girl's speed was surprisingly fast, as if she was born for instant strike. The two were still fighting, and it was as Lin Yi said, Luo Shaoxing was completely locked down by Ziyu. His life-killer blade couldn't unleash its full power when he was in close range, and Ziyu was using a close-range instant attack. Even if it was just a fledgling form, it was enough to catch someone off guard for a Foundation establishment practitioner like that. Instant strike really is effective. That guy can't find a chance to fight back at all. He's really being led by the nose. Qintian's eyes lit up. Yu Bing, however, still frowned. That's true, but Ziyu isn't really threatening him yet. He'll run out of stamina soon, won't he? Instant strike is a fighting style that allows you to gain the upper hand as long as you're in close range, but the downside is that each attack will be greatly weakened, and the stamina and qi will be used up quickly. It's not suitable for a long fight. Lin Yi said. Doesn't that mean Ziyu's in danger? Ling Shan said worriedly. You're wrong. I suddenly realized that Ziyu has a very strong trait yesterday, very suitable for instant strike. You'll understand if you keep watching. Lin Yi smiled mysteriously. A very strong trait. Everyone paused, staring at Ziyu's performance. They didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, but slowly, their faces changed. This fight had been going on for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, and with Ziyu's speed, she shouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Her attacks should be slowing down, but she was acting the exact opposite. Not only that, but from Luo Shaoxing's movements, his attacks were much stronger than before. How could that be? Everyone was puzzled. The more he fights, the stronger he gets. Ziyu seems to have this type of constitution. Lin Yi explained with a smile. Normal people would get weaker and weaker as they used up their stamina, but there was a type of person who could unleash strength far beyond normal. Ziyu looked weak and petite, but she had this kind of strong body. It wasn't a coincidence that she was a delinquent girl in the past. It was in her genes. A constitution that can unleash strength in the later stages. Everyone was shocked. Just when they were shocked, the fight had reached its climax. As Ziyu's attacks got faster and faster, her attacks got stronger and stronger, and Luo Shaoxing, who had been on the defensive all this time, was starting to lose his strength. In just a short period of time, he'd already been hit 5 times. Even though his protective Jin Qi had blocked most of the power, he had still accumulated quite a bit of damage from being hit by the consecutive attacks. At this moment, he was already slightly injured. Even though the injury was not serious, it had more or less affected his movements. This was the start of a vicious cycle. It looks like the result will be out soon. Xanejia nodded, a little surprised. The situation was clear now. Ziyu's unexpected performance had given her the upper hand, and if Luo Shaoxing didn't bring out a powerful counterattack, the battle would be over soon. Luo Shaoxing was well aware of this fact. Unfortunately, this was the first time he had seen a close-range instantaneous attack. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Facing such a fast-paced close-range attack, he couldn't even use a complete move, let alone counterattack. To be defeated by a weak little girl, how could such a stupid thing happen to me? Seeing that he was being forced into a corner step by step, Luo Shaoxing was finally ready to risk everything. Lin Yi's lips curled up at this. Close-range attack was a very strong fighting style, but it wasn't invincible. As long as he chose the right strategy, he'd be able to deal with it. There were 2 things he needed to do in order to deal with a close-range attack. 1, he couldn't let the opponent get close to him easily, and 2, he had to open up the distance as soon as the opponent got close, even if he had to pay the price of getting hurt. Luo Shaoxing didn't do these two things at all. He didn't even realize that risking everything at this time coincided with the second point. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Without enough patience and means, he could only rely on a moment of desperation to break through. Close combat, a fighting method that was highly respected on Heaven's Stage Island, was simply too weak. Shaoxing didn't think too much in the situation, and used the snow kill style all of a sudden. Ever since he lost to Ling Shan in the first round, the weakness of this signature move of the Snowsword School was known to everyone, and so he had to be extremely careful every time he used it, or he'd be countered easily. The spectators were speechless. All Ziyu had to do now was attack his throat, the obvious opening, and the fight would be over. This wasn't an easy thing to do under normal circumstances, but with Ziyu's close-range skills, seizing the opportunity was a piece of cake. But Ziyu didn't seem to care at all, continuing her rhythm, attacking all parts of Luo Shaoxing's body, except the throat. This little girl actually saw through it. Instead of being happy, Luo Shaoxing was shocked. His desperate move was just a facade. He wanted to use the snow-killing style to bait his opponent. In fact, he did not intend to use the snow-killing style at all. From the moment he started to use it, he was ready to change his move. Chapter 5203. As for whether or not Ziyu herself noticed it, that wasn't certain. But even if she didn't, she wouldn't care. After all, she was the type that focused on controlling the initiative. Even if it meant missing the opponent's opening, she couldn't follow the opponent's rhythm unless she had absolute confidence in killing them in one hit. This was the first rule Lin Yi emphasized when he taught her how to do it. Bam! Just as Luo Shaoxing was playing around, Ziyu's barrage of attacks knocked him down on the ground. Even so, she didn't stop, continuing her attacks on him without any intention of holding back. Ugh! How cruel! Everyone's eyelids twitched. As long as Luo Shaoxing didn't admit defeat or faint, the battle wasn't over yet. Even if he was knocked down, he could still chase after him. But normally, people would stop when the fight was over, and it was rare to see someone like Ziyu chasing after him. Even Lin Yi and the others felt a chill running down their spine as expected. Ziyu was a ruthless person deep down in her bones. After a while, he looked at Luo Shaoxing, who was about to be beaten to death without a chance to fight back, and Xianijia couldn't watch it anymore. Alright, this duel ends here. I declare Ziyu the winner, and Luo Shaoxing 1 win, 3 losses. He's eliminated. Aw. That's it. Ziyu pulled her hand back, still looking like she hadn't had enough yet. That's enough, save some strength for the next round. Lin Yi couldn't help but sweat as he looked at the pitiful Luo Shaoxing on the ground. Meeting an opponent like Ziyu really was the worst thing he'd ever experienced in his life. Alright, but Lin Yi bro, the close-range attack you taught me is really good. I feel like I'm burning up, I can't stop. Ziyu hugged Lin Yi's arm excitedly. Everyone smiled when they heard this. This was probably not the effect of the instant close-range attack, but purely due to her own special physique. Ziyu's victory was a good start for everyone, and Yu Bing, Xiaobo, and the others all passed as expected. They all got the right to enter the Archean Trials with 3 wins and 1 loss. With this, Lin Yi's group only had 2 people left to fight in the 5th round, Ziyu and Cold. But with Ziyu's current condition, there shouldn't be anything to worry about in the next round. At least at the Foundation establishment level, close-range attack was a very troublesome way of fighting. Most people wouldn't be able to react in time, and without the guidance of a master, no one would be able to block Ziyu's close-range attack. Right now, Ling Ling was the one who was a little worried. Although she was very strong now, not only did she possess the Shattered Ice physique, but she had also developed a powerful move such as prison drawing. She had just advanced to the Foundation perfected stage. At the same time, she was facing the predicament of insufficient vital energy. If she could not recover in time, she might repeat the mistakes of the fourth round. That would be troublesome. Lin Ebro, why don't you give Cold Sis a private training session too? Wouldn't that be great? Ziyu suggested. She was a living example, and with Lin Yi's level and judgment, the effect of a private training was unquestionable. Sure. Lin Yi nodded and turned to look at Lang Lang. Based on the current situation, there's still a lot of room for improvement, whether it's prison formation or other aspects. We should be able to gain something with targeted special training. What do you think? That. Cold hesitated and shook her head firmly. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I haven't even stabilized my foundation establishment level yet, and I haven't mastered ground prison yet, so I think we should leave the training for later. This time, I want to overcome it with my own hard work. Alright then, I believe you. Good luck. Lin Yi patted her shoulder lightly. Although it was a little risky to do so, he felt very gratified. Just like what Cold had said, it was better not to bite off more than one could chew. It was commendable for her to realize this. In the fifth round of the trial, no one chose to challenge someone of a higher level. After all, those who stayed until this round were disciples who had gone through 4 rounds of intense battles, with 2 wins and 2 losses. There was no room for accidents anymore. Instead of choosing to challenge someone of a higher level, they might as well participate in the 5th round. At least this way, the difficulty would be lower, and they would have a higher chance of qualifying for the archaic trial. There were only 4 foundation establishment level complete practitioners left, and when Axionijia drew out the first group, everyone was shocked. Their eyes focused on the 2 in the field, Cold against Duanmuyu. Oh. Looks like I've gotten myself into a good show. Xue Jianfeng smiled with great interest. After a few days of recuperation, the frostbite left by Cold's extreme version of confinement prison had completely healed. However, because of this, he couldn't be present to supervise the battle these few days. Hence, he couldn't specifically target Lin Yi's group. Otherwise, they wouldn't have passed so smoothly. Fortunately, the result of the draw did not disappoint him. Although he had to admit that Cold's strength was indeed not to be underestimated, especially that prison drawing was even more shocking. It was difficult for an average master of the same level to contend against it. However, Duanmuyu was not an ordinary character. Moreover, from the previous match, Cold's condition was not considered good. The odds of winning against Duanmuyu in this match was not high. If Duanmuyu could eliminate Cold, although it was barely satisfactory for Xue Jianfeng, it could be considered as a consolation. At this moment, not only Xue Jianfeng, but the rest of the crowd also revealed an expression of watching a good show. After all, this was a rare showdown. Both sides were the hot topic, especially since this was the final showdown. No matter what the result was, one side was bound to be eliminated on the spot. Who would it be? Please. Cold took the lead and bowed slightly to Duanmuyu. Please. Duanmuyu, on the other hand, made a gesture of invitation. She looked calm and composed on the surface, but she was secretly on guard in her heart. She warned herself that no matter what, she could not let the opponent use the painted confinement. Even Xue Jianfeng, a beginner stage gold core expert, almost suffered a calamity. If she was the one trapped, then everything would be over. After the greeting, the atmosphere in the field suddenly began to become extremely tense. The crowd at the side did not even dare to breathe, quietly waiting for the 2 to officially start. Chapter 5204. She wants to end the fight quickly. Duanmuyu was shocked, but she was not surprised. Since she had already run out of true qi in the previous round, it was impossible for her to fully recover even after 2 days of rest. Especially when facing a strong opponent, ending the battle as soon as possible could be said to be the only choice. In fact, it wasn't just cold. Duanmu had the same thought. She was facing the same predicament as cold. If she couldn't think of a way to end the fight quickly, it would be hard to predict how the situation would develop. Bam! Both of them launched their kicks at the same time, but neither of them touched the other because they were aiming for the other's vitals. This had nothing to do with the Ming men of the moves. It was a direct way of exchanging lives for lives. Everyone gasped in unison, stunned. Even if the outcome of this fight was directly related to the qualification to enter the Archean trials, there was no need to fight so desperately right from the start, was there? Ling Shan and the others' hearts skipped a beat. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Fortunately, both of them didn't really exchange lives for lives. They both chose to pull back their legs at the last moment. Just when everyone let out a sigh of relief, the same scene happened again. Everyone's hearts were in their throats again. They only relaxed when the two of them separated again. It was like a roller coaster. This isn't good. I'm afraid it'll go against the strategy of ending the fight quickly if this goes on. Duanmu looked at Cold, who was charging at her with a serious face. She frowned as she used the method of exchanging lives for lives to force her to retreat. She had no other choice. She didn't dare to take Cold's moves head-on because she was afraid of the legendary Ice Shatter physique. Otherwise, even if she had chi protection, she would be gradually affected. Once her speed was limited, she would be trapped. Therefore, she could only use such a method to force Cold to retreat. However, it would gradually evolve into a battle of physical strength and vital energy. The situation would go out of control after a while. If the situation was still the same, she might not be able to hold back her attack and it would really turn into a mutual destruction. Seeing that Cold was attacking again, Duanmu changed her strategy. A withered leaf fell from her palm, and she disappeared. The bleak autumn atmosphere instantly swept across the field. The fall of a leaf signified the beginning of autumn. Here comes the show. Everyone's spirits were lifted. According to Duanmu's previous habits, after falling leaves indicates autumn, would be followed by a leaf like a mountain, and the winner would be decided soon. Unexpectedly, at the same moment, a bone-chilling coldness enveloped the entire place, and the source was Lang Lang. Prison on the ground. Everyone was shocked again, and they looked at each other. But we can't even see Duanmu's figure. Even so, he can still use prison of drawn ground. Furthermore, it covers such a large area. Isn't this too exaggerated? Although it's a prison with herself as the target. Cold is really going all out this time. Lin Yi could not help but smile when he saw that. In theory, prison on the ground would only be used when the opponent was locked. However, under special circumstances, it could also target Cold herself like what she was doing now. The shattered ice constitution had a magnifying effect on this, which was enough to expand the range of prison on the ground by several times. However, even Cold herself would suffer from frostbite, just that it would not be as serious as the average person. Everyone had yet to understand what was going on, but for safety's sake, Xianijia once again led the crowd to retreat a good distance. Everyone only stopped when they were almost at the shore, for fear of being accidentally hurt by Cold's prison on the ground. Cold's surroundings were empty, and not a single figure could be found within a radius of 100 meters. However, everyone knew that Duanmu must be hiding in this open space, waiting for the opportunity to kill in one hit. However, where was she? Everyone, including Xianijia, was trying their best to find Duanmu's figure. However, it was destined to be useless. Duanmu had used it at least 3 times in the first 4 rounds of the competition. Unless she took the initiative to show herself, otherwise, even a beginner gold core expert like Xianijia would not be able to locate her position. If it was really that easy to be broken, Yi Luoji of Autumn would not have become the signature of Yiling's sect. Of course, Lin Yi was the only exception. Yi Luoji of Autumn could deceive beginner gold core experts, but it would be too fake to deceive someone at his level. It was a pity that Cold was not Lin Yi. Everyone could not detect Duan Muyu's position, and neither could she. That was why she used prison on herself. Otherwise, she would not have to take such a risk. This Cold is really strong. Duan Muyu frowned when she saw this scene. She had indeed concealed herself with the help of the fallen leaves of autumn, but she could only hide from the other party's senses. She could clearly feel the bone-chilling coldness. In fact, because of the bleak autumn, she could feel it much more clearly than others. This bone-chilling coldness could really kill someone. This was not surprising. What really surprised Duan Muyu was that the power of prison on the ground could be raised to such a level in just 3 moves. It almost completely overturned her previous judgment. Duan Muyu was definitely one of the people who observed the battle between Cold and Shui Jianfeng the most attentively. After all, both of them were very likely to be strong opponents that she would have to face. As the leading senior sister of Yiling's sect, Duan Muyu's observation skills were absolutely top-notch. This was the minimum requirement to enter Yiling's sect. Although she had only seen it once, she could already see some of the tricks of prison on the ground. Duan Muyu knew very well that this was a powerful killer move that needed to be laid down. The more laid down, the more powerful it would be. It was also because of this judgment that Duan Muyu was very determined to end the battle quickly from the beginning. Not only could she avoid the risk of overdrafting her vital energy and physical strength, but she could also restrain her opponent's most feared prison on the ground. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. If it was not for the fact that her Yi Luoji of Autumn also needed a certain amount of time to accumulate, Duan Muyu would definitely have used it immediately. Of course, it was within the acceptable range if she could only deal with her opponent for 3 moves. However, she did not expect Cold's prison on the ground to reach such a level after only 3 moves. It was even stronger than when she was fighting against Shui Jianfeng. In that case, could it be that her previous judgment was completely wrong? Duan Muyu's confidence could not help but waver. After all her speculations were based on appearances. To be honest, it was not easy to come to such a conclusion after only 1 observation. Unfortunately, she did not know the principle of prison on the ground. Chapter 5205. Even so, Duan Muyu did not reveal any flaws. She adjusted her strategy in an instant and prepared to snatch the attack. Falling leaves of autumn and 1 mountain-like leaf, this was the most common and most threatening combo move. It was also Duan Muyu's original plan. However, just like the falling leaves of autumn, this powerful and overbearing move needed time to charge up. Everyone knew about this routine, but it was still impossible to defend against it because no one knew where and when the attack of 1 mountain-like leaf would come from. The problem now was that she was affected by the bone-chilling cold of the painted ground prison. Duan Muyu discovered that the vital energy in her body was beginning to show signs of stagnation. If this continued, she would not be able to use her mountain leaf again. Instead of sitting on the ground and waiting for death, she might as well give it her all. A thin iron leaf appeared above Lang Lang's head out of thin air. It pressed down with an incomparably heavy and majestic aura. 1 mountain-like leaf. Boom! The iron leaf was only the size of a palm, but it left a clear leaf print the size of half a basketball court on the ground. The depth of the print was as high as a person's height. It was astounding. Ah! Ling Shan and the others screamed when they saw this. Didn't this mean that Lang Lang was crushed to death by the 1 mountain-like leaf? However, they immediately breathed a sigh of relief because Lang Lang had already rushed out from the leaf print. Although she was obviously injured, judging from her current state, the injury should not be too serious. Is this guy made of iron? Someone could not help but exclaim. The others were also confused. They had seen the power of one mountain-like leaf with their own eyes. A foundation perfected expert was blown away on the spot. Even if Lang Lang's strength was stronger than a foundation perfected expert, she should not be able to jump around after taking on the one mountain-like leaf. This was too ridiculous. Shui Jianfang snorted when he heard that. Most people could not understand the scene just now, but as a Golden Core Realm expert, he saw it clearly. Duan Liyu's one mountain-like leaf was indeed powerful. A normal foundation perfected expert would be courting death if he took it head-on. It was the same for Lang Lang. However, Cold Lang did not take the attack head-on. Instead, she had already stepped on the ground and shrunk herself before the mountain-like leaf came crashing down. Instead of saying that the mountain-like leaf's power had landed on her body, it would be more accurate to say that most of the power had been absorbed by the ground. That was why she was able to sustain such a light injury. Shui Jianfeng secretly felt that it was a pity. He couldn't wait for Cold to be beaten to death by Duan Miyu. He didn't expect that she actually escaped this calamity. Oh no! Duan Miyu's heart skipped a beat. She had already used up most of her true qi against knowledge of the autumn and mountain of fallen leaves. She had bet most of her chips on this. At the very least, she had to severely injure her opponent before she could take control of the situation. An opening. Lang Lang's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, she rushed forward and gave him a head-on kick. With a bang, Duan Miyu was sent flying. What a pity. Lin Yi shook his head slightly as he witnessed the scene. Lang Lang had grasped the opportunity very well. Duan Miyu's momentary absent-mindedness had indeed exposed a small opening. However, Lang Lang was affected by her prison drawing, so her speed was obviously slower than usual. This gave her opponent a chance to defend himself hastily. Otherwise, the outcome of the battle would have been decided. Lang Lang also felt that it was a pity. Duan Miyu, on the other hand, could not help but secretly feel lucky. Even though she had already used her arms to block her chest before the opponent's kick landed on her, and her protective chi had been strengthened to its peak in an instant, she still received quite a bit of impact. A thin layer of frost was left on both of her arms. In a situation like this, the longer the fight dragged on, the greater the effect of the confinement spell would be. Her flaw earlier was also affected by the confinement spell. After receiving Cold Lang's kick head-on, the freezing effect was magnified infinitely. The white frost was the symbol. At this moment, she could not even feel the existence of both her arms. They were completely frozen. Phew! Lang Lang let out a long breath upon seeing the situation. She was about to give her opponent the final blow. Truth be told, even she could not withstand the powerful freezing effect of the prison drawing. If she continued to delay, she would probably follow in her opponent's footsteps. Should I admit defeat? Lang Lang suddenly stopped moving. There was no enmity between her and Duan Miyu. If it was not necessary, she did not want to deal a heavy blow. Otherwise, it would not only be a matter of elimination for Duan Miyu. It was unknown whether he could fully recover from the severe injury. If there were any sequelae because of this, it would be an endless trouble. No one knew the horror of the prison drawing better than herself. This degree of frostbite was not something that could be easily cured. What nonsense are you talking about? Duan Miyu glanced at her. A trace of determination suddenly flashed across her eyes. The battle has just begun, isn't it? As she spoke, a withered leaf slowly slid out from her palm. Everyone could not help but look at each other when they saw it. Was Duan Miyu still thinking of turning the tables with the falling leaves in autumn? Although his perseverance was commendable, it was too unrealistic, right? Lang Lang was also very puzzled. However, she reacted quickly. From her standpoint, it was already benevolent of her to give her opponent the chance to admit defeat. Since Duan Muyu insisted on fighting till the end, she could only fulfill his wish. Without another word, Lang Lang immediately gave her opponent the final blow. At this moment, both of Duan Muyu's arms were frozen numb. Even the movement of slipping out from the withered leaf seemed very clumsy, let alone fighting back. However, before Lang Lang could land her attack, Duan Muyu's body suddenly erupted with an incomparably strong vitality. As if it had materialized, his entire body was emitting a dazzling light. The withered leaf has turned green. Lin Yi looked at the withered leaf that was slowly falling to the ground in astonishment. At this moment, it had turned emerald green and was full of vitality. This is the withered leaf rejuvenation. Xanejia exclaimed. No wonder he, the junior uncle who led the team at the early stage of the Gold Core realm, was so shocked. In fact, not only him, even Bing Wuqing was visibly moved when she saw this scene. The withered leaf rejuvenation, like the falling leaves in autumn, was one of the few symbolic moves of the Yiling sect. However, it was never something that a foundation-building disciple could master. In theory, only a Gold Core expert could master it. No one would have thought that Duan Muyu, who was only at the foundation-building grade completion, had already mastered this move. In this way, even if this woman's strength and potential were not comparable to the shocking geniuses like Lang Lang and Ling Tianyu, there was not much difference. Chapter 5206. Burning her life force in advance, and at the same time, a 3-month-long period of weakness. This is the price of rejuvenating withered leaves. She actually went this far just for a duel. Is this woman crazy? Bing Wuqing could not understand. In the eyes of a person who respected absolute rationality, Duan Muyu's actions were meaningless. Indeed, it was extremely likely that Duan Muyu would be able to win this battle by relying on the heaven-defying recovery effect of spring withered leaves. However, so what if she obtained the qualifications to participate in the primeval trials? There were less than 2 months left until the primeval trials. In other words, she would be in a weakened state for at least a month, and participating in the primeval trials in such a state was simply courting death. Instead of that, she might as well admit defeat. Even a child could distinguish the pros and cons of this. Was it just a momentary impulse? In fact, it was no wonder that Bing Wuqing could not understand. Even after her dantian was destroyed by Lin Dongfang, she had always maintained sufficient rationality. A momentary impulse was an experience she had never experienced before, so naturally, she could not understand. However, Xanejia could understand Duan Muyu's feelings. This was probably not a momentary impulse, but something she had long planned. Once the situation turned bad, she would use rejuvenating withered leaves and win at all costs. For Duan Muyu, this was not just because of the primordial trial qualification. More importantly, it was related to the reputation of the entire Yiling sect. She was the leading senior sister of the Yiling sect. If she could not even get the minimum qualification for the trial, wouldn't it be a disgrace to the entire Yiling sect? For the sake of the Yiling sect, Duan Muyu could not lose this duel no matter what. Absolutely not. Bystanders could see things clearly, but Lang Lang had never seen rejuvenating withered leaves before. Before she came to the secular world to train, she was only in the early stage of foundation establishment. Whether it was experience or strength, she was far from her level. In addition, she was from the always mysterious Yiling sect. Before this, she had never even heard of rejuvenating withered leaves, so she was at a loss for what to do. Bang! This time, it was Lang Lang who was sent flying. Duan Muyu, who had recovered to his peak state in an instant, was unstoppable. Even without a powerful move like a mountain-like leaf, Ling Ling, who had consumed a lot of energy, was no longer as strong as she wished. Immediately after that, Duan Miyu did not let Cold Lang have the upper hand. He did not give Cold Lang any chance to react at all as he followed up with a series of fierce attacks. Cold Lang was completely at a disadvantage. Xianijia felt a little strange as he watched the two of them intertwining with each other. He could not help but mumble, "Since you've recovered to your peak state with rejuvenation, you should have used powerful moves like Falling Leaves of Autumn and Mountainous Leaf to end the battle as soon as possible. Why did you waste so much effort?" Ever since they had witnessed the power of the prison spell, everyone knew that they could not afford to drag out the fight with cold. Otherwise, the longer the fight dragged on, the more severe the frost damage they would suffer. Duan Miyu might have the upper hand now, but if he could not defeat Cold in a short time, he might just fail miserably. Duan Miyu must be well aware of this, but she still insisted on choosing this method. Was there any special purpose? 5 more moves. Duan Miyu silently reminded herself in her heart. She was estimating the effects of the prison drawing on her. If this trend continued, she would probably be frozen again in another 5 moves. At that time, she would really be powerless to reverse the situation. 5 more moves. Cold's judgment was the same as hers. As long as she could withstand 5 moves, she would win. With such judgment, the next 5 moves were destined to be thrilling. If the initial exchange of life for life was just a test, then this time it would be the real deal. The eyelids of the bystanders twitched. Both of them were injured every time they exchanged moves, but they maintained the toughest stance. Neither of them backed down. Once they backed down, they would lose. Are they still women? Why are they even more manly than us pure men? The men were sweating. A battle like this should be exciting, but it was a battle between 2 women. They did not know what to say. This battle is unexpectedly exciting. No matter who wins or loses, Cold should be able to benefit a lot. Lin Yi nodded. Although he couldn't bear to watch Lang Lang get hurt, he wouldn't interrupt her as long as her life wasn't in danger. After all, there was nothing in this world that could make someone mature faster than an intense battle like this. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged 4 moves. There was only 1 move left to the bottom line of the judgment. There's no other way. Duan Miyu clenched her teeth. Her opponent's tenacity was far beyond her expectation. At this point, she could no longer hold back. She could only use the last of her vital energy to fight with all her might. 1 leaf like a mountain. Cold's heart skipped a beat. In her current state, it was already very difficult for her to withstand the previous 4 moves. It was impossible for her to withstand the 1 leaf like a mountain. More importantly, her frostbite speed was greatly affected by her painted ground imprisonment. She could not dodge it even if she wanted to. There's no other way. Cold said the same words as Duan Miyu. She did not dodge or dodge. She said in a deep voice as she formed a seal with her hands, "Ice prison mirror, shatter." As soon as she said that, everyone seemed to hear the sound of a huge ice mirror shattering. Then, not only in the field, but even the entire island's temperature suddenly dropped by a large margin, sending chills down everyone's spine. In the blink of an eye, the initially intense and explosive scene suddenly froze. The mountain-like leaf's powerful attack came to an abrupt halt. Cold and Duan Miyu did not make any follow-up moves at the same time because both of them were frozen stiff. This. Xianijia looked at the scene with his mouth agape. He could not utter a proper sentence. Needless to say, the rest of them were dumbfounded and speechless for a long time. I didn't expect her to use the ice prison mirror, this is really... Lin Yi was also a little shocked and did not know what to say. The ice prison mirror was the follow-up and advanced move of the painted ground imprisonment. The principle was to instantly erupt the bone-chilling coldness of the painted ground imprisonment in a more threatening way. However, as Cold had yet to fully master the painted ground imprisonment, it was only a preliminary idea in Lin Yi's mind. He had yet to figure out the specific way of circulating vital energy. He did not expect Cold to use it directly. Apart from her shocking innate talent, this girl's guts were also boundlessly big. It seems that both of them are frozen stiff and unable to move. Let's announce the result as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be repercussions if they are frozen for too long. That'll be troublesome, said Lin Yi to Axianijia. Chapter 5207. Although Cold and Duanmuyu had lost their ability to move at the same time, both of them were still conscious. It seemed like they were desperately mobilizing the vital qi in their bodies. Under such circumstances, whoever could stand up first would be the winner. As long as they waited patiently, there would definitely be a result. However, it was as Lin Yi had said, if they dragged it on like this, both of them would suffer from side effects from the cold. Compared to the outcome of this battle, the two of them were clearly more important. In this case, the result would be a big problem. After all, there had never been a tie in the trial competition. Moreover, this battle was directly related to the qualification for the Archean trial. Whoever lost would be directly eliminated. Even Axianijia could not come to a conclusion so easily. Needless to say, of course we'll wait for them to stand up on their own. Xue Jianfang snorted coldly. He did not care about Duanmuyu, but it would be best if he could take this opportunity to cripple Cold. That's impossible. Both Cold and Duanmuyu are genius disciples with outstanding aptitudes. If something really happens to them, let alone Yiling's sect, even the upper echelons of your Snow Sword sect might not agree to it. Axianijia refuted immediately and said in a deep voice, I'm the person in charge of this trial competition. I have the right to make decisions on the spot. I can't do something as stupid as letting them freeze to death. Xue Jianfang choked. Axianijia had the absolute right to speak, which he could not compete with. He could only take a step back and said, then what do you want to do? You're not siding with Cold, are you? Although she's from my Snow Sword sect, it's obvious that Duanmuyu had the upper hand earlier. For the sake of fairness, I think Duanmuyu should be the winner. Axianijia was speechless. Of course, he was siding with Cold. However, the situation just now was exactly as Xue Jianfang said. If Cold won, not only would Duanmuyu not agree, but the others would also say that he was sitting on the wrong seat. I don't think so. Why don't you think about who performed the shattered ice prison mirror? If it wasn't for the power of the shattered ice prison mirror, it wouldn't have caused such a situation. No matter how you look at it, it should be considered as Cold's counterattack. Lin Yi immediately stood up and argued. Since it was related to Cold's qualification for the Archean trial, he naturally would not sit idly by. Reactive strike. You even froze yourself to this state, do you want me to die of laughter? Xue Jianfang snorted disdainfully. If it's that funny, why aren't you dying from laughing? Ziyu stuck her tongue out. You! Xue Jianfang's eyes turned cold, and he subconsciously wanted to make a move to teach this stinky girl who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. In the end, Lin Yi's stare made his hair stand on end, and he could only resentfully put away this thought. He muttered in his heart, this guy is clearly only at the Great Circle of Foundation establishment, so why does he have such a frightening aura? Since everyone has their reasons, why don't we all vote together? Each leading senior brother from each sect has one vote. Whoever gets the most votes will be the winner, Axianijia said after thinking for a while. I have no objections. Let's let them start healing then. Lin Yi looked at him. If Axayanigia was a little more daring, he'd definitely go against everyone's opinions and not use this kind of method to smooth things over. It looked like he didn't offend anyone, but in reality, he wasn't getting any favors from either side. The only good thing was that even if the Archean Alliance wanted to pursue the matter, he wouldn't have to take responsibility. After all, this was public opinion. It couldn't be helped. Axayanigia was just that kind of person. He looked honest but was actually very sly. He was easy to talk to normally, but when it came to a critical moment, all he could do was to protect himself. Lin Yi wasn't surprised at all. You really know how to flatter yourself. You're not the leading senior brother of any Archean sect, you don't even have the right to vote. What kind of opinion can you have? Shui Jianfang took the chance to taunt. Who said I don't? Axayanigia snorted and immediately announced, Grandmaster is the most respected person in the Green Clouds sect of the North Island. Of course, Grandmaster has the final say on who the Green Clouds sect of the North Island wants to vote for. He also knew that his suggestion to let everyone vote had unwittingly displeased Lin Yi. At this time, of course, he had to think of a way to remedy the situation. Letting Lin Yi decide was equivalent to voting for Leng Leng in disguise, as a way to express his apology. Alright then, I'll vote for Leng Leng, Lin Yi said bluntly. Some people are really mesmerized by lust, but I'm different. In this case, of course, we have to listen to the public opinion. The Snow Sword faction votes for Duanmuyu, Shui Jianfang said tit for tat. When he said this, he completely forgot about the existence of Bing Wuqing. It should be known that Bing Wuqing was above him in both strength and status. Moreover, Bing Wuqing's identity in the secular world was the Snow Sword faction's leading senior uncle. She should be the one to make the decision, not Shui Jianfang. Feeling a chill on his back, Shui Jianfang suddenly reacted and hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Grandmaster Bing must have the same idea, right? Bing Wuqing did not say anything. It was normal for her to express her dissatisfaction with Shui Jianfang's decision, but it would be a little too obvious if she forcefully voted for Leng Leng. Therefore, she could only maintain her usual style and ignore it. After that, the leading senior brothers of the other primordial sects also expressed their opinions one after another. Soon, Axayanigia got the tabulation results. Leng Leng has 7 votes, and Duanmuyu has 4 votes. So according to the voting results, Leng Leng should be the winner of this round, Axayanigia announced. How could it be? Shui Jianfang was very surprised. The result was really unexpected. He thought that with the strength of the gold core stage that he had shown before and the prestige he had in the past, he would definitely be able to get hundreds of people to respond to his call. The leading senior brothers of the other primordial sects would definitely curry favor with him. Who would have thought that everyone would go to curry favor with Lin Yi? Admittedly, the strength of the gold core stage that Shui Jianfang had shown was a little scary, but in the end, he was just a beginner gold core stage expert. He could at most be a little deterrent to the crowd, but it was really too much to ask everyone to curry favor with him. Every primordial sect had a group of gold core stage experts. Even if they really did curry favor with Shui Jianfang, what good would it do them? Chapter 5208. Even if there was no way to rope them in directly, they should at least build a good relationship with them and not become enemies. Otherwise, it would be a huge joke if Lin Yi were to publicize their sex counter moves in a fit of anger. Lin Yi soon realized what everyone was thinking. Although he never intended to make a fuss about this, it was not a bad thing. Since the result is out, let's call it a day. Leng Leng and Duanmuyu, both of you can focus on recuperating. Don't leave any sequelae, Axayanigia said immediately. Hold on, I think this voting is unfair, so it should not be counted. Shui Jianfang jumped out to object again. Oh. Everyone voted on the spot without any chance to contact each other secretly. I would like to ask, how is it unfair? Xaneg frowned. I think with the level of these voters, not all of them can understand the meaning of this duel. How can the result be counted if a group of people who can't even understand the meaning of the duel be the judges? To ensure the fairness of the result, I suggest we follow the tradition of the Archaic Alliance and let the Golden Core experts vote, Shui Jianfang said unscrupulously. As soon as he said that, everyone's face darkened. How could he say that their level was not high enough? Wasn't this guy looking down on them too much? However, Shui Jianfang's words were not baseless. In the past, every competition in the Archaic Alliance was indeed judged by the Golden Core experts. Only they had enough vision to understand the whole meaning of the duel between Foundation Establishment disciples. Otherwise, as Shui Jianfang said, ordinary Foundation Establishment perfected experts might not be able to understand what Lang Lang and Duanmuyu had done. However, if it was really decided by the Golden Core experts, he, Bing Wuqing, and Xinejia were the only 3 people present. As long as there were no accidents, Bing Wuqing would definitely be on his side. Wouldn't it be up to him to decide? You're being unreasonable. Even if the Golden Core experts were to be the judges, they must be from different sections. Who is qualified to do that now? Xanejia refuted on the spot and then said decisively, it's hard to go against the will of the masses. I announce the winner of this duel is, at this moment, Lin Yi suddenly interrupted, since both sides are equally matched, how about we call it a draw? A draw. Xanejia was stunned and said awkwardly, but there has never been a tie. Moreover, this match is directly related to the qualification to participate in the Archean trial. Can't they both qualify for the trial at the same time? Although this is a bit of an exception, special cases are special cases. I don't think the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance would be so unreasonable. After all, these are 2 rare geniuses. It would be a pity if one of them was eliminated, said Lin Yi. Originally, whether Duanmuyu qualified for the Archean trial or not had nothing to do with him. However, after watching this duel, this woman's determination really moved him. Moreover, Lin Yi was also very interested in the rejuvenation of withered leaves. There was no mention of this move in the summary of the mental cultivation methods sent by Tian Chan. Therefore, he might as well do her a favor. Maybe he could find a chance to get some words out of her in the future. Xanejia pondered for a moment and finally nodded, yes, Grand Uncle Master is right. Rules are dead and people are alive. For this duel, Duanmuyu even used the rejuvenation of withered leaves. It would be too unreasonable to force her to lose. Since that's the case, I'll declare it a draw. Nobody objected to this result. Firstly, it was to do Lin Yi a favor. Secondly, the result did not affect them at all. At most, Duanmuyu qualified for the trial. Moreover, Duanmuyu had just used the rejuvenation of withered leaves. It would be impossible for her to recover within 3 months. Even if she qualified for the trial, it would only be symbolic. Wait! Shui Jianfang jumped out again and interrupted. What do you want? Xanejia, the honest man, finally got angry after being interrupted by this guy several times. He said with an unfriendly expression, according to the results of the voting, cold one. Announcing it as a draw is already very considerate of you. Shui Jianfang, don't push your luck. This. Shui Jianfang choked for a moment. At this moment, he actually felt a substantial killing intent from the other party for the first time. An honest man was really scary when he was angry. After choking for a moment, Shui Jianfang finally chose to shut his mouth. Now, not only the honest man, Xanejia, was angry, but everyone else was also staring at him with an unfriendly expression. If this went on, he would completely offend the crowd. It was unnecessary just for such a small matter. In this way, the opening battle of the 5th round of the trial competition ended in a draw. Cold and Duanmuyu qualified for the Archean trial at the same time. Duanmuyu panted weakly as she forced herself to lift her head to look at Lin Yi. Thank you. She knew very well that if it was not for Lin Yi's insistence, Cold would have definitely won this battle. If that happened, she would be eliminated on the spot. Losing the qualification for the trial was a small matter, but it would affect the reputation of Yiling's sect. That was why she was grateful. You're welcome, Lin Yi said as he looked at her. Not only was she very weak, but she also suffered from severe frostbite due to the intense battle with Cold. She was too close to Cold when the ice prison mirror was broken. He said, if you don't mind, how about I help you to heal your wound? I think it's hard for you to recover on your own in your current state, right? But Duanmuyu was a little hesitant. She was now in a weak state where the vital energy in her body was very weak. She did not know how long it would take for her to completely recover on her own. Moreover, the degree of frostbite from the ice prison mirror was not something that could be recovered easily unless there was a special medicinal pill in this area. I'm going to heal Cold anyway. If you don't mind, you can come along. It's no trouble at all. Lin Yi smiled. Duanmuyu hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. All right, thank you. With her status and background in Yiling's sect, the sect's higher-ups would definitely think of a way if she made a request. However, it was a problem whether she could take the medicinal pill in her current state. If she was not careful, the life-saving medicinal pill might turn into a fatal poison instead. Instead of that, it was better to take the risk and trust Lin Yi for once. Chapter 5209. TCH, he doesn't even let Duanmuyu go, what a pervert. Xue Jianfeng curled his lips at the scene, but there was an obvious jealousy in him. He'd been dreaming of replacing Lin Yi with himself. He had Ling Shan and the others help Cold and Duanmuyu to a secluded area to sit down. He then sat down and started healing the two girls. The frostbite from the shattered ice prison mirror was very troublesome, and even a great recovery pill wouldn't have much of an effect. Lang Lang was fine, since she was the source of all the frostbite. Even if he got frostbite, it wouldn't be too serious. Duanmuyu, on the other hand, was in trouble. Not only was her frostbite severe, but she was also in an extremely weak state. Even if she used qi to treat her wounds, it would be even worse if she used a great recovery pill. It was a good thing that Lin Yi's consciousness was much sharper than when he was on Sky Class Island, and his control of qi was much finer and sharper. Otherwise, he might really be helpless. Feeling the subtle changes in her body, Duanmuyu's eyes widened in disbelief. This Lin Yi actually had such a miraculous healing method. Don't move, or don't blame me if you lose control of your qi. Lin Yi frowned. I'm sorry. Duanmuyu blushed and quickly suppressed the shock in her heart, trying her best not to move. After a while, Lang Lang's internal injuries were no longer a problem. She told Lin Yi about it and went to the side to continue her healing. Duanmuyu, on the other hand, had only recovered a small portion of her injuries. There's something I'm really curious about. I wonder if you could answer it for me. Lin Yi suddenly asked in the middle of healing. Duanmuyu paused and reacted, this is why you're healing me. Don't worry, it's just a common question. Lin Yi smiled and asked, rejuvenation leaf should be a very costly move, right? Can you tell me about it? Overdrawing your life force in advance, plus a 3-month period of weakness. Duanmuyu didn't try to hide anything. There was nothing to hide. Anyone in the Archaic Alliance with the slightest bit of experience would know this. What about the effect? After paying such a huge price, he must have recovered to his peak state, right? Why don't I look like it? Lin Yi continued to ask. You could tell. Duan Muyu was shocked. Nonsense, if you had really recovered to your peak state at that time, why would you need to be so restrained when facing cold? I think it's because he doesn't have enough true qi in his body, so he doesn't dare to rashly use powerful moves, right? Lin Yi speculated. Even from his point of view, the combination of falling leaves in autumn and a mountain-like leaf was a very simple and unsolvable combo. Not to mention the foundation building stage, it would be very effective even in the gold core stage. It should not be a problem to deal with Lang Lang in that state. Duan Muyu went silent for a moment before he said slowly, since it's like that, then I won't conceal it anymore. I didn't utilize the complete version of rejuvenation, so I haven't recovered to my peak state. I've only recovered less than half of it. I see, then the period of weakness won't be as long as 3 months, right? Can I make it in time for the primordial trials? Lin Yi suddenly came to a realization. This Duan Muyu was not the kind of woman who only lived for the sex reputation. The fact that she could use the incomplete version of rejuvenation in that situation not only proved that she had outstanding qualifications, but also proved that she was very smart. If everything goes well, it should be possible. Duan Muyu nodded. This primordial trials happened once in 1,000 years, she did not want to miss it no matter what. Then, I wish you all the best. Lin Yi suddenly stood up and said lightly, the frostbite has been cleared. You can only rely on yourself to slowly recover from the following matters. Excuse me. Oh, thank you. Duan Muyu sensed the condition of her body. As expected, other than being extremely weak, everything else was normal. She could not help but be surprised and happy. Seeing that Lin Yi was about to leave, she asked, Say, why did you help me? Could it be that you've fallen for me? Pfft. Lin Yi's body staggered, almost choking on her words. Wasn't this woman a little too direct? What? Isn't it? Duan Muyu was stunned. In her opinion, since Lin Yi showed his goodwill to her for no reason and took the initiative to heal her, he must have some ulterior motives. It couldn't be that he really wanted to ask that common-sense question just now, right? Other than her looks, could it be that he had taken a fancy to something else? Although the word beauty didn't really match with Duan Muyu's manly temperament, it was undeniable that she was indeed a unique beauty. There was no lack of suitors in the small pugilistic world of the supreme ancient immortal realms, it was just that none of them could enter her sights. Being stared at by her like this, Lin Yi felt a little awkward. He thought for a moment and said, if I said that I was looking for an opportunity to secretly learn rejuvenation, would you believe me? Although this was mostly a joke, after witnessing the heaven-defying effects of rejuvenation, it would be a lie if Lin Yi said that he was not tempted at all. Although this move had terrible after-effects, the powerful effect of instantly restoring one's peak state was still very useful in certain situations. However, to Lin Yi, who had the jade pendant space to continuously replenish his spirit qi, rejuvenation was not that valuable. It could only be considered a good backup trump card. Of course, it still had great research value. You want to learn rejuvenation? Duan Muyu looked at Lin Yi seriously, pondered for a moment, and shook her head. This is the trump card of our Yiling sect, and we can't teach it to outsiders casually. Moreover, the aptitude requirement to master this move is very unique. Even among the Yiling sect's disciples, there aren't many who can master it. Oh, forget it then. It was just a whim. Goodbye. As he spoke, Lin Yi left, leaving only a silhouette in the distance. This Lin Yi is really a guy who can't be seen through. Duan Muyu said thoughtfully. Although the battle between Cold and Duan Muyu had dragged out a lot of time, there were very few battles in the 5th round to begin with. Basically, there were only 2 or 3 battles in each group, and most of them ended very quickly. Among them, it was worth mentioning that there was a familiar face to Lin Yi in the mid-stage foundation establishment group, Fei Yongxing. Chapter 52:10. The tournament continued, and soon, it was Ziyu's turn. Letting Lang escape was already embarrassing enough for Xue Jianfeng, and naturally, he had to use this chance to mess with Ziyu. Unfortunately, Ziyu wasn't the same as before, and with a set of instant attacks, she took the opponent's life cleanly. The opponent didn't even have a chance to fight back, and as for Xue Jianfeng's warning, that was pure nonsense. At this point, Lin Yi's group had all obtained the qualifications to participate in the arcane trials. As for Xue Jianfeng, who had vowed to make Lin Yi feel the pain of his heart's pain, not only did he get nothing out of it, but he almost lost against Leng Leng. He was a golden core early stage, and he almost got dragged down by a foundation establishment perfection. That was a huge loss of face. I'll let you guys live a little longer. Don't even think about living after the arcane trials. Looking at the cheering Lin Yi's group, Xue Jianfeng gritted his teeth. He didn't wait for the tournament to end before turning around and leaving with a dark face. He wasn't in a hurry to go back to sulk, but to apologize to the center. The tournament was already over. He had boasted in front of the glasses doctor before, and now he hadn't done anything at all. This wasn't just a problem of making a fool of himself. If the glasses doctor thought that he wasn't useful enough and cancelled his priority training, he'd really be coughing up blood. You're finally here. The glasses doctor said in a low voice, a little unhappy. That training competition is the highlight of this period of time, and my every move is being watched. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, it's not convenient for me to leave as I please. Please forgive me. Xue Jianfeng hurriedly tried to remedy the situation. Is that so? But why did we hear that not only did you leave in the middle of it, but you even left for a few days? Dafeng Bro curled his lips. This. Xue Jianfeng suddenly choked. Only then did he realize that someone else must have reported to him. After all, with so many people secretly relying on the center, it would be easy for the bespectacled doctor and brother Dafeng to grasp the situation of the trial. What? Do you still want to continue covering up the fact that you were beaten up by Leng Leng? Are you trying to keep us in the dark? Big Brother Feng coldly snorted as he asked. He did not know about Lin Yi's plan to instigate defection. He was merely unhappy with Xue Jianfeng, the traitor. Not only that, the training competition was such a good opportunity, but you didn't do anything at all. Instead, Lin Yi and the others advanced smoothly one by one. How do you explain this? The bespectacled doctor was also extremely dissatisfied. To think that he had listed Xue Jianfeng as a person to focus on nurturing. He didn't expect that this guy would actually be so useless. Now, even he felt that he had lost all face. Xue Jianfeng didn't dare to quibble. He admitted his mistake on the spot without the slightest hesitation, and his attitude was rather sincere. Please calm your anger, sirs. I did not do my job well and have disappointed you. I deserve death. His attitude stunned Big Brother Feng. In order to confuse him and make him think that he was still trusted, the bespectacled doctor had revealed to him the matter of focusing on nurturing. Big Brother Feng wanted to take this opportunity to trample on Xue Jianfeng. Even if he was to focus on nurturing, he had to find someone more pleasing to the eye. However, Xue Jianfeng's attitude made him unsure of how to kick him when he was down. All right, I'll give you a chance to explain. The bespectacled doctor nodded. Although he was also very disappointed with Xue Jianfeng's incompetence, the name list had already been submitted. He did not want to go back on his word unless it was absolutely necessary. What's more, Xue Jianfeng's background in the Snow Sword faction was indeed very useful to the center. It was because of this that they treated him differently. Yes, thank you, sirs. Shui Jianfang felt as if he had been pardoned. The bespectacled doctor's attitude meant that as long as he could give a good reason, he would be able to get away with it. He quickly said, "It's not that I didn't put in the effort in this tournament, but I did everything I could." Threats and promises were used, and the Archaic Alliance disciples who fought with Lin Yi also promised to go all out, but the result was that everyone was completely suppressed from start to finish. There was really no other way. Continue. The bespectacled doctor didn't say anything. Doffing Bro, naturally, didn't say anything. Yes, this kind of suppression wasn't just on the surface. It was a direct suppression of the life gate. I don't know how Lin Yi did it, but to be suppressed like this in a fight of the same level, it'd be hard for him not to lose. Shui Jianfang said respectfully. If that's the case, then I can't blame it on you. The bespectacled doctor nodded. Shui Jianfang couldn't fight Ling Shan's group himself, after all. The most he could do was let the others use the opportunity to kill him. Failure was something he couldn't do anything about. But you're an early phase golden core, and not only did you fail to kill Ling Ling, you even almost lost to her. You can't deny this, can you? Doffing Bro frowned. This. Shui Jianfang's face turned red, and he could only say, this subordinate was indeed careless and underestimated the enemy. I didn't expect that the painted ground imprisonment created by her shattered ice physique would be so powerful, so I suffered a loss. However, this subordinate guarantees that I won't fail next time. Next time. Doffing Bro snorted. An early phase golden core couldn't even handle a foundation establishment full circle, and he still had the face to mention next time. Alright, let bygones be bygones. Since we failed this time, we need to think of a way to make up for it. Do you understand me? The bespectacled doctor interrupted. Thank you for your trust. I can't thank you enough. Shui Jianfang was overjoyed and quickly said, after the competition ends, the next 2 months will be a collective rest period. Everyone will go into closed-door training. I think Lin Yi's group won't be an exception, so it'll be hard to find a suitable opportunity before the primeval trials. We can only wait for the primeval trials. If that's the case, then we'll wait for the primeval trials. The bespectacled doctor decided. This was something he and Shui Jianfang had decided on their own. It wasn't an order from the higher-ups. It would be fine if there was a suitable opportunity, but since there wasn't one, there was no need to force it. Yes. Shui Jianfang nodded. He couldn't help but ask, then when will the training start? If we wait until the primeval trials, it won't be convenient. Chapter 52:11. That's great. Thank you for the training. Shui Jianfang was overjoyed. He thought he was done for after making such a fool of himself. He didn't expect the bespectacled doctor to think so highly of him. As long as he could get the opportunity to focus on training, his strength would definitely improve by leaps and bounds again. By then, even Bing Wuqing would be under his feet. This was his dream. Big Brother Doffing couldn't help but feel a little helpless, but since the bespectacled doctor had said so, he couldn't say much. He was nominally the leader of this operation, but to put it bluntly, he was just a puppet in name. What troubled him the most now was how to deliver the information to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he waited for Shui Jianfang's strength to increase greatly and waited for an opportunity to strike in the primeval trial, even Lin Yi would suffer a great deal if he was caught off guard. However, if there were no special circumstances, he could only act with the bespectacled doctor. Even if he could move freely, it would not be easy to avoid the Primeval Alliance's disciples and contact Lin Yi. After all, there was no cell phone signal here, so he couldn't make a call even if he wanted to. He was at his wits' end. Fortunately, Big Brother Doffing didn't have a headache for too long. It wasn't because he had the opportunity to go out alone, but because Lin Yi came to look for him. He was about to go to the primeval trial, and he didn't know how long it would take. Lin Yi naturally had to find a way to inform him. Although Big Brother Doffing couldn't be too far away from the bespectacled doctor, there was still some free space, such as taking a dump. Of course, Big Brother Doffing didn't know that Lin Yi would take the initiative to look for him. He was really taking a dump when Lin Yi's voice suddenly came from above his head. "Doffing, how have you been, fuck?" Big Brother Doffing was shocked. When he looked up, he didn't see anything. He couldn't help but say suspiciously, "No way. Is it because I've been cooped up in this damn place for too long that I'm having auditory hallucinations? Will I become mentally ill? Do you want me to take you to the mental hospital?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. As he spoke, he condensed a physical spirit in front of Big Brother Doffing. "Boss? Is it really you?" Big Brother Fong was surprised and overjoyed. He immediately reacted and lowered his voice, grumbling, "Boss, why are you so elusive? You scared the shit out of me." Lin Yi was speechless. Seeing that this guy was about to get close to him without even pulling up his pants, he quickly jumped back in fright. He pinched his nose and frowned. "Can you please wipe your butt first?" Oh. Big Brother Fong picked up a few leaves from the side and rubbed them symbolically. Then, he pulled up his pants without a care in the world. However, Lin Yi's eyelids kept twitching. Fortunately, he wasn't a clean freak. Otherwise, he would have collapsed at the sight of this scene. However, out of psychological effects, he subconsciously took 2 steps back and maintained a safe distance. "Let's talk this out. Just stand there." Ugh. Big Brother Fang's expression was very sad, but the other party's disgust was already written on his face. He was too embarrassed to continue to get close to him, so he quickly threw away the leaves in his hand and said embarrassedly, "Boss, how did you find me? I knew when you came in. I saw your every move. It's just that I wasn't proficient in the spirit state at that time, so I didn't dare to come down and meet you." Lin Yi smiled. Spirit state. Big Brother Fong was confused. Lin Yi didn't explain these things to him in detail. Of course, he couldn't understand at his level, but he didn't need to understand too much. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "It's good that you know. I was afraid that you would be kept in the dark and be tricked by these guys." Sure enough, my worries were unnecessary. Boss is the boss. It's all thanks to you keeping an eye on me. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't even know they sneaked in. The consequences would be unimaginable. Lin Yi sighed. During this time, Big Brother Fong didn't seem to play any role, but in fact, his existence itself was very valuable. Even if Lin Yi had rebelled against Bing Wuqing and the other Archaic Alliance masters, Big Brother Feng's position was still unique. No matter what, it's fine as long as I can help boss." Big Brother Fong smiled carelessly and said, "By the way, recently, Dr. Glasses and the others are doing some kind of focus training program. I wonder if boss has noticed." Focus training program. Lin Yi was taken aback. He had been busy training everyone to deal with the trial. He didn't have time to monitor every move here, so he really didn't know anything about it. He quickly said, "Tell me in detail." "I don't know the specific plan. It was proposed by the bespectacled doctor directly to the higher-ups. I didn't do it myself. I just heard him mention it casually. However, one thing is for sure. The target for training this time is Shui Jianfeng," Brother Doffing said in detail. "Shui Jianfeng? How can it be him? Shouldn't Bing Wuqing be valued more?" Lin Yi frowned. Since it was a focus training program, it meant that the center would definitely invest a lot of resources into it. It would be great if it was Bing Wuqing, who was one of them. It would be equivalent to the center working for him for nothing. He didn't expect them to choose Xue Jianfeng. From what Dr. Glasses said, it's probably because of Xue Jianfeng's background in the Snow Sword faction. It would be convenient for the center to do anything in the Archaic Alliance in the future. Big Brother Feng frowned. The higher-ups of the center did not intend to tell him these things clearly, but intentionally or unintentionally revealed them to him through Dr. Glass's mouth. They did not trust him as an outsider, which made him feel a little unnatural, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong at the moment. Sure enough, the center will not let go of this fat piece of archaic underworld. Lin Yi shook his head and laughed. There was no need to think about this at all. The center would definitely copy what they did on Heaven Stage Island to Archaic Underworld. Although this expansion method of the Chamber of Commerce was not very clever, it was indeed successful. Apart from this, there are no other movements recently. The instigating and controlling of the Archaic Alliance's disciples has basically stopped. If we want to go further, we will have to wait for instructions from the higher-ups, Big Brother Feng said. Okay, I got it. Lin Yi nodded and instructed, I'm going to bring some people to participate in the archaic trials. You stay put and hide. Remember, safety first. Unless I tell you to move, you can't move on your own. Don't raise suspicions. Boss, don't worry. I understand, Big Brother Feng promised. Chapter 52:12. Boss is the boss. His methods are so fucking unpredictable, Brother Dofing praised. Suddenly, Lin Yi's voice came from above. There's something I forgot to tell you, please tell me, boss. Brother Dofing immediately stood at attention, looking like he would go through fire and water without hesitation. You stepped on shit. Lin Yi's tone was very complicated. If it wasn't for this, he might be willing to stay a little longer. But now, he really couldn't stand it anymore. Fuck. Who the fuck peed and pooped everywhere? Do you have any morals? Brother Dofing suddenly cursed. Even the bespectacled doctor in the distance heard the commotion and looked puzzled. Lin Yi ran away in embarrassment, and at the same time, he said, that seems to be your own. After leaving, Lin Yi didn't directly return to the island exclusive to the Blue Clouds sect on the North Island. Instead, he went to the territory of the Snow Sword School and found Bing Wuqing after carefully avoiding everyone's eyes and ears. Bing Wuqing was shocked when she heard Lin Yi's primordial spirit voice transmission. She was in the late Golden Elixir realm and had her signature ruthless ice aura, but she didn't notice it at all. She couldn't help but be secretly afraid. Although Lin Yi was only in the great completion of Foundation establishment, his methods were really unfathomable. Lin Yi didn't show up on the spot. After all, Xue Jianfeng wasn't far away. After the primordial spirit voice transmission, he waited in another secluded place on the island. Bing Wuqing immediately understood. She stood up and walked toward a secluded place. However, when she turned around, she ran into Xue Jianfeng. This guy looked very suspicious. Where are you going, Senior Brother Bing? Why do I need to report to you about what I'm doing? Bing Wuqing glanced at him. He was such a person. Besides, there was a huge gap between their strength. Of course, he didn't need to care about Xue Jianfeng's feelings. That's not it. It's just that the two of us work together. Senior Brother Bing, you can let me know in advance if you need anything. Maybe I can help. Xue Jianfeng said shamelessly. It wasn't because of anything else. He was purely afraid that Bing Wuqing would go to the bespectacled doctor for special training like him. Wouldn't it be a big loss if she took his priority training spot? Bing Wuqing frowned and said, I'm going in seclusion. Seclusion. Xue Jianfeng was still skeptical until he confirmed that Bing Wuqing wasn't heading in the direction of the bespectacled professor. Only then did he feel relieved. He was secretly pleased with himself. Go ahead and cultivate in seclusion. When you're done and come out, I'll see if you still have the guts to put on that dead face of yours. After making sure that Xue Jianfeng had not followed her secretly, Bing Wuqing then went to look for Lin Yi. She bowed respectfully and asked, "May I know what instructions the higher-ups have for me?" "It's nothing. I just found out that the center is going to focus on nurturing Xue Jianfeng. So, I'm just informing you," Lin Yi said indifferently. "There's such a thing." Bing Wuqing was startled when she heard that. When she thought of Xue Jianfeng's strange behavior just now, she suddenly realized that this brat was trying to get special treatment behind her back. A wave of anger rose in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She said in a low voice, "Your subordinate is slow and didn't realize it in time. Please punish me." "Punish?" Lin Yi laughed when he heard that. He casually threw 2 elixirs to her and said playfully, "All right then. Take these 2 poisonous pills as punishment and kill yourself as an apology." This. Bing Wuqing's expression changed. She struggled and hesitated for a moment, but then she took the elixirs and stuffed them into her mouth. She had no intention of resisting at all. Of course, she knew that resistance was futile. After all, she still had Lin Dongfang's goo in her body. If she dared to resist, she would definitely die a horrible death. Lin Yi was a little stunned when he saw that. Bing Wuqing's action couldn't be said to be very loyal, but at least it showed that she was very adaptable. It was easy to deal with people like her, as long as she always maintained an advantage in terms of strength. At the last moment, Lin Yi finally stopped Bing Wuqing. He laughed and said, "Why don't you take a look at what these elixirs are? How dare you stuff them into your mouth like that?" Bing Wuqing was shocked when she heard that. Only then did she take a closer look at the 2 elixirs in her hand. When she came back to her senses, she was instantly stunned. She cried out in shock, "Supreme-grade gold cores. If you really eat both of them together, let's not talk about whether you can take it or not. Even if you can, you'll definitely regret it to death," Lin Yi said, amused. I forgot myself." Bing Wuqing was a little embarrassed, which was rare for her. Just as Lin Yi had said, if she really ate these 2 supreme-grade gold cores together, she would definitely regret it to death. She could have broken through to gold core perfected, but if she ate them together, she might only be able to reach the peak of gold core late stage. "It's nothing. If even your behavior is considered to have forgotten yourself, I reckon no one in the world can keep their composure." Lin Yi shook his head. Bing Wuqing's actions just now had truly given him a fright. Although he couldn't completely rule out the possibility that she was acting, that kind of reaction wasn't something an ordinary person could pull off. He had to admit that she was indeed a talent. "Thank you so much for your guidance." Bing Wuqing clenched the 2 supreme-grade gold cores tightly, her eyes shining with excitement. She couldn't help but feel excited. These 2 elixirs were almost equivalent to guaranteeing her a 2-level upgrade in an extremely short period of time. It was a good thing that she couldn't even dream of. "Since you're my subordinate, I naturally have to give you some benefits. Otherwise, if even trash like Xue Jianfeng rides over your head, wouldn't it be very embarrassing for me?" Lin Yi said with a smile. "Rest assured, I will definitely keep a close eye on Xue Jianfeng and not let him get out of control." Bing Wuqing understood tacitly. "Very well. In that case, you should go into seclusion. I'll take my leave first." As he spoke, Lin Yi transformed into the form of a primordial spirit and disappeared. Bing Wuqing stayed where she was for a moment. No one knew what she was thinking about. Suddenly, a cold light flashed in her eyes, and she immediately sat down cross-legged to adjust her condition. There was still 1.5 months before the start of the primeval trials. If she wanted to completely digest the medicinal effects of these 2 supreme-grade gold cores, she had to make the best use of her time. At the same time, Xue Jianfeng, who was on the other side, inexplicably shuddered. Then, he went to look for the bespectacled doctor. The long-awaited intensive training was finally about to begin. Chapter 52:13. Even with Lin Yi's protection, Lin Yi couldn't guarantee everyone's safety. After all, Xue Jianfeng, who'd gone through intensive training, was a completely different person. He was a threat that couldn't be underestimated. And so, in the last month and a half, Ling Shan and the others went into closed-door training. With the supreme-grade foundation and foundation-breaking pills that Lin Yi had prepared for them, even if they couldn't level up, they could at least solidify their strength and protect themselves. As for Lin Yi, it was a bit troublesome for himself. Other than trying to figure out the tricks and uses of the half-primordial spirit, it seemed like breaking through to foundation full mastery was as hard as reaching the heavens. He didn't know why, but no matter how hard he tried, he was always lacking something. If it was someone else, they might think that they were just a thin line away from success, and would try everything they could, but Lin Yi himself was a mystic early-phase practitioner, after all. He had a lot of experience when it came to things like breakthroughs, and he knew that he was missing something. Forcing it would only backfire. But the problem was, what was missing? Or was it that the limit of the primordial spirit was foundation full mastery? He didn't know, but the former was more or less possible, but if it was the latter, then there was nothing he could do. Even Lin Yi couldn't do anything about it. Lin Yi felt helpless. Although the half-primordial spirit state was a great trump card, it wasn't a long-term plan. Even someone like Xue Jianfeng was a golden core practitioner now, and he'd be even stronger in the primordial trials. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was stuck at foundation full mastery, and he couldn't make any progress. Lin Yi really didn't have the strength to do what he wanted. 1.5 months later, everyone was gathered by Axayanijia again, but they were divided into 2 groups. One of them was eager to try, because they were about to start the primordial trials that only happened once in 1,000 years. The other group was depressed, because they were the losers of the primordial trials. No matter how rare the primordial trials was, it had nothing to do with them anymore. Everyone, the year-long training in the mortal world has officially come to an end today. Although many things happened in the process, it's finally over. Congratulations. Xanijia said loudly and nodded to Lin Yi gratefully. That's right, Lin Yi. If it wasn't for Lin Yi, the Grand Master, who turned the tide, it was hard to say what would have happened between the Primordial Alliance and the Cultivators' Alliance in the secular world. Perhaps the secular world would have been plunged into misery and suffering, and the Primordial Alliance would have lost a bunch of disciples. The situation would be out of control, and Xanijia, as the Grand Master who led the team, would have to bear the blame. The others didn't comment on this. For most of the Primordial Alliance's disciples, the secular world experiential trials was just a recreational activity. Apart from seeing the colorful world of the secular world, they didn't expect to gain any substantial gains. In fact, most of them went out for a walk at the beginning, and after that, they stayed in the transit islands to cultivate. Instead of saying that they came out for the secular world experiential trials, it was better to say that they came out for closed-door training. Since the secular world experiential trials has ended, according to the order of the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups, everyone should go back to their respective places. Xanijia paused and announced, first of all, the disciples who were eliminated in the grand competition will be teleported back to the primordial underworld, and report back to your respective sections. No one is allowed to stay here. Everyone had expected this result. Although they were reluctant to leave the transit islands for the unique spiritual chi, it was an order from the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups. They didn't have the guts to defy it, so they could only agree in unison. Under Axay and Aegea's supervision, everyone entered the teleportation formation. With a flash of white light, they disappeared in the teleportation formation. After that, Axay and Aegea turned to Lin Yi and the others and said, "As for the rest of you, you are the elites who have passed the grand competition and successfully obtained the qualifications to participate in the trial. The place you will be going next is naturally the legendary Primordial Trial." "Martial Uncle Axayan, where is this primordial trial that you mentioned?" someone asked impatiently. "Yeah, you made us dig for so long in the underwater spirit jade mine, saying that it's to prepare for the primordial trial, but I don't see a third teleportation formation." The others followed. 2 teleportation formations, one was connected to the secular world and the other to the primordial underworld. Where was the third one? "There is, but it hasn't appeared yet." Axay and Aegea pretended to be profound and smiled. "It hasn't appeared yet." Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. Could it be that the teleportation formation could be hidden? "Everyone, calm down. According to the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups, the teleportation formation will appear today. Just wait patiently," Axay and Aegea said and sat down. Lin Yi smiled faintly and sat down as well. The others looked at each other. Although their hearts were itching like a cat scratching them, since Axay and Aegea wanted to keep them in suspense, there was nothing they could do. They could only sit down and wait. At this time, Duan Muyut suddenly walked over and sat down beside Lin Yi under everyone's surprised gaze. Under normal circumstances, when a woman sat next to a man, she would be embarrassed and blushed. However, her expression was calm and composed, without the slightest bit of embarrassment. On the contrary, she was more elegant and calm than most men. "Brother Lin, thank you for your help last time." Duan Miyu cupped her hands. "You're welcome." "It's nothing." Lin Yi smiled faintly and shook his head. "It might be nothing to you, but it's no small matter to me. If it wasn't for Brother Lin, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to participate in the primordial trials and would have to return home like the others," Duan Miyu said seriously. He wasn't just saying that out of politeness. If it weren't for Lin Yi treating her frostbite, just the frostbite from the shattered ice prison mirror would have given her a headache for a few months. Let alone participating in the Archean trials, she might still be busy treating her wounds right now. "So, Miss Duan Miyu has fully recovered?" Lin Yi asked curiously. The week period of rejuvenation withered leaves was 3 months. Although Duan Miyu used an incomplete version, it had only been 1.5 months. It was still unknown whether she had fully recovered. Maybe this woman was taking the risk to participate in the primordial trials. "You can say that." Duan Miyu's answer was ambiguous. After all, they were not familiar with each other. If she casually told Lin Yi, it would be too immature. Chapter 52:14. They chatted to kill time as they waited for the moment Axay and Aegea was talking about. They waited for an entire day, and nothing happened even when the sky turned dark. There wasn't even a shadow of the so-called third portal. "Uncle Axayan, where is this third portal you're talking about? Is it just a legend?" The people couldn't help but wonder. That. Axay and Aegea was a bit troubled himself, but this third portal was something recorded in the archaic pugilistic world. It definitely wasn't a legend. But, could it be that the Archaic Alliance had miscalculated the date of the portal's appearance? That was hard to say. Axay and Aegea's reaction made the group even more suspicious. They'd been looking forward to this once-in-a-thousand-years trial for a whole year, and they'd even given it their all to pass the toughest test in history, but now they couldn't even see the shadow of the third portal. If this was just a legend, how could they take it? Just when everyone was thinking about it, Ziyu suddenly said, "The moon tonight is so round and so close." Everyone was taken aback when they heard that. They looked up and started to discuss among themselves. For some reason, the moon tonight was indeed very round and close to them. If it was just round, it would be fine. After all, the moon was waxing and waning. Even if this was a transit point, there was nothing strange about it. However, the moon tonight was ridiculously close. It felt like they could touch it if they stretched out their hands. It was almost pressing down on everyone's face. This was something that no one had ever seen before. "Look, the tide's receding so fast," someone shouted. Everyone looked over, and the tide was indeed receding fast. In just an instant, the water level dropped by a huge chunk, and there were no signs of it slowing down at all. The tide was receding faster and faster, and in the end, it sounded like it was going to destroy the world. It was truly shocking. It's actually connected. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. This was originally a transit island, but after the unprecedented turbulent ebb tide, the shallow sea that originally separated the islands had all turned into land, and they were all connected. Isn't that the spirit jade mine under the sea? It's much easier to mine now. We don't have to come up for air every once in a while, and it's so slow. If we go mining now, we can probably get 3 pieces a day, the group discussed. However, Xianijia ignored the crowd's discussion. Instead, he walked toward the new land that appeared out of nowhere with a complicated and abstruse drawing in his hand. Everyone didn't know what was going on, so they stood up and followed him. They couldn't help but ask, "Martial Uncle Xian, is there any mystery in this?" "The secret is right here." Xianijia suddenly stopped and pointed at the round black stone he was stepping on. The group walked up and looked at it. Other than being a bit harder, there didn't seem to be anything special about it. They looked at each other. What's so special about it? Xianijia smiled mysteriously without saying a word. After comparing it with his abstruse drawing, he turned around and walked to another place. Soon, he found another piece of black stone, which was exactly the same as the previous one. Then, he found the third, the fourth, the fifth. In the end, he found a total of 72 identical black stones in a large area around him. Furthermore, they seemed to have formed an inexplicable and mysterious spell formation. What are these? The group was confused. Black stone plum blossom formation. Xianijia smiled while stroking his beard. Black stone plum blossom formation. What is this thing? Is it also a type of teleportation array? Everyone was confused by what they saw. No, but we'll see the third teleportation formation soon. Come, everyone, help me. Put 3 pieces of spiritual jade on each black stone, Xianijia said. A moment later, 3 pieces of spiritual jade were placed on each of the 72 black stones according to Xianijia's instruction. At first, there was no movement, but soon, they began to glow. Then, an invisible gust of wind rose into the sky, sweeping away all the sand in an instant. The entire ground sank by 7 to 8 meters. The group was shocked. The black stones they saw earlier were just a small part of it. It turned out that there were 72 black stone pillars, and there was an ancient teleportation formation among them. The third teleportation formation. The group was overjoyed. One of them said regretfully, "If we knew we could find the teleportation formation by removing the sand, we wouldn't have wasted so many spiritual jades. We could have saved them with just a little effort." It was not difficult for them to remove the sand, but more than 200 spiritual jades were a huge sum in the ancient underworld. Many of them had never seen so many spiritual jades in their lives. You're overthinking. The black stone plum blossom formation is an ancient maze. If you don't activate it with spiritual jades, you won't be able to find the teleportation formation even if you clean up all the sand. Xianijia shook his head. Since we found the teleportation formation, let's start the teleportation. Shui Jianfang suddenly stood up and said. Ever since he came back from the center's intensive training, his temperament had changed a lot. He became more reserved and deep. He no longer had the arrogant attitude he used to have. Instead, he was more like a venomous snake that kept spitting out its tongue as if it was going to devour someone at any time. Hearing his words, the group who were still immersed in shock immediately came to their senses. They became impatient and wanted to be the first to rush into the teleportation formation. All right, then everyone enter in order. There's no need to hurry. There are only 43 people in total. With the scale of this ancient teleportation formation, it's enough to teleport everyone in one go. Xianijia immediately led the group into the teleportation formation one by one. 43. This was the total number of people participating in the archaic trials, and this was also because of Lin Yi's group. Otherwise, the number of people would be even lower. People valued quality over quantity. This was the unified thinking of the Archaic Alliance. They didn't need to let every disciple of the Archaic Alliance get the opportunity. They just needed to make sure that the most deserving disciples didn't miss it. Chapter 52:15. So you're saying that the Spirit River might be fake? Someone asked. I don't think so. After all, almost all the ancient books related to this trial ground have mentioned about the River of Consciousness. However, it's hard to tell what exactly the River of Consciousness is. You can only explore it with your own eyes. Maybe it's really a legendary river of consciousness, or maybe it's a dangerous river of consciousness. Everyone, just be careful. Xianijia said. The group looked at each other. The thing they were looking forward to the most was the legendary Spirit River. Xianijia's words were like pouring a bucket of cold water on their heads. No matter what, take care of yourselves. Anyway, take care of yourselves. I'll stay here for a month after you're teleported over. If anything happens to you, you can always find a way to teleport back here. However, if you wait for a month, the tide will rise again. By then, you'll have to find another one-way teleportation formation to return to the primordial underworld. As for the map of the one-way teleportation formation, each of you will have a copy. However, it might be different from the actual map, Xianijia reminded. In other words, within a month, everyone still had the chance to back out if the situation was bad. After all, this training ground was only opened once every 1,000 years, and no one knew how it was now. If they were to directly cut off everyone's path of retreat with danger everywhere, causing all the genius disciples to be annihilated, then that would be a huge joke. However, after a month, he wouldn't even have the chance to change his mind. No matter how dangerous the situation would be, he would have to brace himself and find another one-way teleportation array. Otherwise, he would be trapped in the trial grounds waiting for death. Xianijia started arranging large amounts of spirit jade to activate the portal. Lin Yi, Ling Shan, and the others looked at each other. According to Xianijia, it wouldn't be easy for them to come back from the ancient Jianghu. If they couldn't come back through the portal, they would have to go back to the ancient Jianghu. The time it would take would be unimaginable. It might take years or even decades. Fortunately, they were mentally prepared for this. They had told their friends and family beforehand, so they could take care of each other. It wouldn't be a big deal even if it took a long time. Everything was ready. The portal was finally activated. A white light flashed, and the scene in front of Lin Yi and the others changed. Why is it so dark? The group thought that their eyes weren't used to it yet, but it was still pitch black after a while. They started complaining. Even if it was pitch black, there shouldn't be no light at all. Don't panic, it's a cave. Lin Yi comforted them and reminded Ling Shan and the others, you can use your spirit sense if you can't see with your eyes. This is something you need to get used to. After reaching a certain level, basically everyone would use their divine sense as their primary means of perception. If they really relied on their eyes, it would be very difficult to even keep up with their opponent's movement technique, let alone fight against them. It really is a cave, and it's very narrow and deep. Leng Leng nodded. She was the second strongest person in the group, and was also a Foundation Perfection practitioner. Naturally, her reactions were faster than Ling Shan and the others. The others also reacted, using their divine senses to sense the surrounding environment. Although there was no visual effect of color, their perception of shapes and silhouettes was more detailed and distinct. Why would the ancients put the portal in such a deep cave? It's scary. The group was speechless. No matter what, let's get out of here first. After saying that, someone took the lead and walked towards the entrance of the cave. The others didn't have any intention of staying here and followed suit one after another. Only Lin Yi stayed and studied the portal underfoot. The structure of this portal was exactly the same as the one in the Transit Islands. In theory, it could be activated with enough spirit jade. But as Axayanijia said, the place would be covered in seawater again a month later, and the black stone plum blossom formation would be activated again. It would be hard to say if the portal could still be used then. Right at this moment, a shrill and miserable howl suddenly rang out not far ahead. What followed was a flurry of panic. Everyone who had gone out earlier had actually all fled back, except for two people. One was Xue Jianfeng, and the other was Bing Wuqing. Everyone, be careful. Lin Yi gestured for the group to form a defensive formation. This was something they'd practiced for all sorts of dangers they might face in the primordial trials, but this formation was more than enough for defense, not enough for offense. It only made them a little safer. The group didn't dare tarry. Something that could scare so many elites of the Archaic Alliance this badly had to be a big threat. Sure enough, after the people at the front fled back, a group of fire-like existences also whistled and chased after them. Moreover, there were many of them, if not 10,000, there were at least 8,000. What's this? Ling Shan and the others were startled at the sight. These things were extremely fast, covering the skies in the blink of an eye. One of the Foundation establishment primeval disciples who was a bit slower got caught up and was dismembered into a pile of meat in an instant, his body still sizzling and smoking. It was a horrible sight to behold. Fire bats. Lin Yi blurted out. He'd seen these things in the Book of Omniscient on Sky Island before. They were extremely bloodthirsty spirit beasts, and while they weren't strong individually, at most at the early phase of Foundation establishment, they always moved in groups. Now that there were tens of thousands of them, the threat they posed wasn't something normal Foundation establishment practitioners could handle. The two Golden Core experts, Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, were the strongest among them. If the two of them were willing to go all out, dealing with this flock of fire bats would not be a problem. Unfortunately, the two of them had no intention of doing so. Instead, they directly passed through the flock of fire bats and left, leaving only a group of Foundation establishment experts trapped here. The swarm of fire bats closed in. With the previous example right in front of their eyes, everyone didn't dare to have any thoughts of holding back their strength. They hastily used the martial skills they were most proficient in to counterattack. Rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, and the scene became extremely lively for a moment. However, the bats were too small, and they were extremely fast and agile. The group's messy attacks couldn't hit them, and they could only cover their heads and run. Chapter 52:16. Firebat King. What does the Firebat King look like? Everyone quickly shouted. The thousands of fire bats here looked almost the same. Even if they lined up one by one for them to look at, they probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, let alone in this situation. The strongest one is the Fire Bat King, Lin Yi said in a low voice. It was indeed difficult to tell from their appearance, but one thing was for sure. The Fire Bat King's strength must be above all the fire bats, or else it would not be able to control the entire flock of fire bats. That being said, it was not easy to find the strongest fire bat among the tens of thousands of fire bats. With the divine sense of these Foundation establishment stage experts, it was difficult to even lock onto the position of these rapidly moving fire bats, let alone carefully distinguish the strength of each fire bat. This was as difficult as ascending to heaven for everyone, but it was a piece of cake for Lin Yi. He found the Fire Bat King's tracks in an instant. Most of the other fire bats had strength comparable to the early stage of the Foundation establishment. The stronger ones were at most comparable to the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment. However, this Fire Bat King, which looked exactly the same, had strength above the middle stage of the Foundation establishment. The speed of ordinary fire bats was already extremely fast, so fast that everyone could not react at all. However, this Fire Bat King's speed was several times faster. Although there was a residual flame arc wherever it passed, it could not be determined at all. Perhaps it was right in front of them a moment ago, but in the next moment, it was already hundreds of meters away. Even the flame arc it left behind could not catch up with such terrifying speed. It would be fine if that was all, but the key was that this Fire Bat King was very cautious. Every time it came in contact, it would retreat immediately. Usually, it would quickly hide back into the flock of fire bats after just one bite, making it impossible for anyone to chase after it. With Lin Yi's reminder, the others could not react in time, but two people had noticed the Fire Bat King's tracks. When it attacked again, the two of them attacked almost at the same time. They were Cold and Duanmuyu. In terms of strength, the two women were already top-notch among the Foundation establishment experts. It should have been a piece of cake for them to deal with this Fire Bat King. However, this time, the two women's attacks missed, and they almost hurt each other accidentally. Fortunately, they stopped in time. So fast! Leng Leng and Duanmuyu exclaimed at the same time. The Fire Bat King might not be considered powerful in other aspects, but its speed was truly invincible. Even the vital energy of its moves could not catch up to it. What could the crowd do to it? Fortunately, there was still Lin Yi. Before the Fire Bat King could escape back into the group of fire bats, a blue electric arc had already struck it. Lin Yi's other moves might not be able to do anything to it, but no matter how fast it was, how could it compare to the electric arc? With Lin Yi's current strength at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm, it was impossible for him to completely unleash his signature move. The 5 elements 8 trigrams killing aura and thunder burial were both wishful thinking. Being able to barely use the 5 elements 8 trigrams killing aura was already something he was secretly happy about. Other than that, he could just barely mobilize some of the power of thunder and lightning. However, there was no way he could use thunder burial. It was also impossible for him to use Thousand Thunder Explosion. An electric arc was not a threat to an expert of the same level. At most, it would numb the body for a moment. However, it was just right to deal with the Fire Bat King that was comparable to a mid-stage Foundation establishment realm expert. As expected, after the Fire Bat King was hit by the electric arc, its body trembled and fell on the spot. Although it did not die immediately, it struggled on the ground and seemed to be able to fly. However, the crowd would not give it another chance. Leng Leng went up and struck the Fire Bat King with her palm, freezing it to death on the spot. This was called the Broken Ice Palm. Although it was not an ultimate move like the Painted Prison or the Ice Prison Mirror, it was still a unique palm technique that was fused with the Broken Ice aura. It was Lang Lang's usual move against the enemy. As soon as the Fire Bat King died, the group of fire bats was instantly thrown into chaos. After losing their leader, they instinctively scattered in all directions. Just a moment ago, they were everywhere, but in the blink of an eye, they were all gone. Phew! The group breathed heavily, their hearts filled with fear. At least 3 of them had died to the fire bats, and the rest were injured. If it wasn't for Lin Yi finding the Fire Bat King and killing it, there would have been more of them dead. Most of them would have died here. This was indeed the Archean trials that happened once in 1,000 years. They had left a deep impression on the group. "Alright, let's go," Lin Yi said. Ling Shan and the others nodded, but the other Archean Alliance disciples were scared out of their wits by the fire bats. They all hid behind Lin Yi's group, so that if anything happened, the first to die would be Lin Yi's group, not them. A bunch of scum. Chen Tian curled his lips softly. If it weren't for Lin Yi, they'd be dead by now. Not only did he not say a word of thanks, but he was even hiding behind them with ulterior motives, using them as scapegoats. He was speechless. That's right, Lin Yi bro shouldn't have killed that Fire Bat King. We'll charge out ourselves and let them play with the fire bats. See you humphed. Haha, then we're probably done for. If we're lucky, we might be able to teleport back, but if we're slow, we'll end up like those 3, a pile of meat on the ground. Yu Bing snickered. The others all grinned. The Archean Alliance disciples weren't happy with what they said, but they knew they were in the wrong. They didn't have the face to say anything, otherwise, Lin Yi would force them to walk in front. They didn't have the guts to do that. Not long later, the group finally walked out of the cave, and their eyes widened into a lush forest. Thank goodness, we're finally out. Everyone was overjoyed to see this. Although they knew that this training ground that only appeared once in 1,000 years would definitely be filled with dangers, and that there might be monsters that were even more ferocious and frightening than the flock of fire bats hidden within, this was human nature. There was always an innate fear towards this kind of dark and narrow cave. After experiencing the threat of the flock of fire bats, this fear had been magnified infinitely, causing them to not want to stay even a moment longer. Why are there 3 paths here? Someone called out suddenly. The group only reacted then, looking at each other. The map Axanegia gave them was very sketchy, and not only was there no markings for the fire bat's cave, there was only one path to exit the teleportation formation, but there were 3 paths in front of them, 3 stone paths that weren't too wide or too narrow. There were weeds everywhere, but the paths were clear. Chapter 52:17. Plus, even if that was the case, these 3 stone paths should have disappeared after 1,000 years of weathering. How could they still be here? They couldn't say that these stone paths were reinforced by some special formation, could they? It wasn't impossible, but it wasn't very likely. In comparison, Lin Yi was more inclined to believe that there were other people in this place. Perhaps there were natives here that few people knew about, or perhaps there were trial takers who teleported here from other places. Normal people wouldn't think of this, but for someone like Lin Yi who came back from Sky Stage Island, it made sense. After all, no one said that this teleportation formation was only connected to the transfer islands. Maybe it was connected to Sky Stage Island as well. But no matter what, since they were already here, they could only take it one step at a time. Right, where's Bing Wuqing and Shui Jianfeng? Someone asked. The others all shook their heads. These 2 used their golden core stage strength to ignore the threat of the fire bats, rushing out early. They couldn't even be seen now. Do you even need to ask? They couldn't wait to go to the river of consciousness. They wouldn't stay here and wait for us, would they? Someone said. Not necessarily, this is a once in 1,000 years, the river of consciousness. It's rare for us to come here, so we'd be idiots if we just went to the river of consciousness. We'd be missing out on a lot of good things. Someone laughed. If that's the case, then why are we wasting time here? Let's go. The group couldn't wait to set off, but when they saw the 3 paths in front of them, they all paused and looked at each other before turning their attention to Lin Yi. What? You want me, Lin Yi bro, to open the path for you? You're too despicable. Ziyu said angrily. This. Everyone was a little embarrassed that their thoughts had been exposed. That was indeed what they were thinking. Other than Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, the 2 golden core stage cultivators, Lin Yi was the strongest. Just like what had happened just now, in this primeval trial ground where danger lurked everywhere, only by following Lin Yi closely would they be able to ensure their safety. Haha, you're wrong. I just wanted to see which path Brother Lin would choose. I don't want to pick the same path as me. Someone walked out from the crowd, smiling faintly. It was the young master of the Thousand Blades sect, Ling Tianyu. Me too. Duanmu Yu smiled faintly as well. Only then did everyone understand. No wonder the 2 of them had been silent all this while. It turned out that they had been planning this. Of course, if they could follow behind Lin Yi, it would be much safer. But at the same time, if they encountered anything good, it would be snatched away by Lin Yi's group. They wouldn't even be able to get a sip of the soup, let alone the meat. I see. Then I'll take my leave. Lin Yi nodded to the 2. These 2 were the people he looked up to the most in the Archaic Alliance. This was good, too. There would be less conflict if they each chose a path. It wasn't a bad thing. After exchanging greetings, Lin Yi led Ling Shan and the others to the stone path on the left. None of the 3 paths were marked on the map. No one knew where they would go. He just picked one randomly. Seeing this, Ling Tianyu smiled and immediately chose another path to take the lead. Duanmu chose the 3rd path, leaving the rest of the people to look at each other in dismay and hesitation. Other than Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, who were nowhere to be found, these 3 paths each had a leader. Of course, Lin Yi's group was the strongest. Not only did they have Lin Yi, they also had Cold, a peak-level foundation establishment perfection. Other than Ling Shan and the others, while most of them were only at the early phase, with 2 or 3 at the early phase peak. None of them were easy to deal with, and most importantly, they were extremely united. The others couldn't compete with them at all. Other than that, Ling Tianyu and Duanmu Yu were about the same. The former was only late phase peak, but he was a genius with 1,000 blades. Other than a freak like Lin Yi, he was practically invincible. Duanmu Yu, on the other hand, was a little less famous, but his strength wasn't to be underestimated either. Compared to Lin Yi's group, they were obviously much weaker. Soon, everyone made their decision. Most of them chose Ling Tianyu and Duanmu Yu's paths, and only 3 people chose Lin Yi's path. Compared to the possibility of obtaining a fortuitous encounter, these people obviously cared more about their personal safety. They didn't have any extravagant hopes for the other fortuitous encounters in this ancient trial, except for the river of divine knowledge. Even if Lin Yi's group had a lot of people, and they could take all the treasures and fortunes in front of them, they couldn't possibly take the entire river of consciousness, could they? They didn't have a lot of people in the first place, and this split made them even weaker. But this didn't affect Lin Yi's group at all. As long as they supported each other, that was enough. They wouldn't be happy if all the other Archaic Alliance disciples followed them. Not only would they have to guard against all sorts of dangers and mishaps in the trials, but they would also have to guard against the traitors behind them. It was a headache just thinking about it, and it was much better to have peace and quiet like this. They walked peacefully for almost an hour, and gradually, even Ling Shan and the others started to feel that something wasn't right. Lin Yi bro, why do I feel like this place is weird? Like something's watching us. Ziyu curled up as she observed the surroundings suspiciously. Everything was still a lush forest, but it didn't feel like that at all. She couldn't tell what exactly was wrong. Yeah, I feel like this place is weird too. Ling Shan nodded. Yes, it is. Leng Leng said the same. Her spirit sense wasn't as strong as Lin Yi's, but it was much stronger than everyone else's. This feeling of something being off was even more obvious. Lin Yi looked at everyone and said in a low voice, "You're right, we're being watched by something, but we don't know what it is exactly yet. Be careful, we'll find out soon." Understood. Everyone nodded. Chapter 52:18. Fortunately, the three of them didn't have to be on edge for too long. A sharp whistle came from the sky and three black shadows rapidly approached. The three disciples of the Archaic Alliance didn't even have time to react before they were snatched away. The strongest among them was at the peak of mid-foundation establishment, but from start to finish, they didn't have the slightest ability to resist. They became prey through and through. What the hell is that? Chen Tian and the others jumped in shock. It was only now that they got a clear look at the three shadows. They were all slender birds, and while they weren't as big as the golden-eyed eagles Lin Yi had seen before, they weren't small either, standing at least 3 meters tall. It wouldn't have been a big deal if that was all, but the faces of these three birds were actually three human faces, male and female. They seemed to be able to communicate with each other, but the more it was like that, the more panicked they got. Ling Shan and the other girls paled in fright, quickly hiding behind Lin Yi. Even Cold, a foundation perfection like her, was no exception. This kind of fear had nothing to do with strength or weakness. The key was that the other party's bird-bodied appearance was far too bizarre. Especially to humans, it was probably more horrifying and terrifying than any hideous thing. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Gomang. A bird's body and a human's face. This was something that only existed in ancient mythologies, and he didn't expect to see one in the archaic trials that only happened once every 1,000 years. This was unbelievable. This image seems to be Gomang. Could those ancient myths and legends be real? Chen Tian and the others were tongue-tied. They were all practitioners, and it was because of this that they knew that myths and legends were completely different from reality. But now, even Gomang had appeared. Was that still a myth? Who knows? Lin Yi was speechless. These three Gomang's appearance had a huge impact on everyone, and it was as if their worldview had been flipped upside down. In that short moment of silence, the three Gomangs had already devoured the corpses in their hands, but they still looked like they hadn't had enough. Their greedy eyes quickly landed on Lin Yi and the others, making their scalps go numb. Ha, looks like they're not full yet. Lin Yi laughed coldly. He was someone who'd been through a lot, after all, and Gomang's horrifying appearance only made him feel a little apprehensive. Once he calmed down, Gomang was no different from a normal spirit beast to him. He'd kill him when he needed to. Plus, these three Gomangs weren't that strong. They were much stronger than the fire bats at the beginning, but they were at the level of a foundation establishment practitioner at most. They couldn't compare to the spirit beasts Lin Yi had seen on Sky Class Island at all. That may be the case, but judging from how effortlessly they killed a foundation establishment peak mid-phase practitioner, each of these Gomang weren't weaker than a foundation establishment practitioner at all. They were a lethal threat to Ling Shan and the others. The three Gomangs tilted their heads and talked to each other. Everyone was confused, and Chen Tian couldn't help but ask, what language are they talking about? Of course, they're discussing who to eat first. Fatty lie, you have more meat, so you'll be the first to get eaten. Ziyu plucked up the courage to tease him. She was scared quite a bit, but she'd always been brave. Other than looking a little scary, the three Gumangs weren't that scary. After all, Lin Yi was here. That's not necessarily true. I have more meat, but fat doesn't taste good. You girls, on the other hand, have soft skin and tender flesh. You should be more worried. Fatty Lie said with a smile. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile when he heard that. He'd been worried that the three Gomang would scare the hell out of them, and it'd be troublesome if something went wrong. But it seemed like he'd been worrying for nothing. Everyone's mental fortitude was much better than he'd expected. The three Gomang chattered for a long time before finally coming to an agreement. Suddenly, they charged into the sky as the group formed a defensive formation as though they were facing a formidable foe. However, the outcome was out of everyone's expectations. They just left without any intention of touching them. The group couldn't help but look at each other, relieved. It was hard to say what would happen if they really fought the three Gumangs. Only Lin Yi didn't let his guard down at all, he was still using his divine sense to scan the surroundings. After a while, his lips curled up. Playing this kind of game with us, going away and coming back. They're really smart. Going away and coming back. They're back. Everyone was alarmed when they heard that. Although they weren't as horrified as they were in the beginning, the three Gomang's oppressive and ferocious auras were real. It would be a lie to say that they weren't nervous. To them, these three were definitely ferocious creatures. They're not back. They never left. That was just a trick to confuse us. Lin Yi explained. His divine sense covered a wide range, and it would be strange if he couldn't even lock onto Gomang, who was only at the perfected level of foundation establishment. So cunning. Everyone hurriedly maintained their defensive formation, guarding against the three Gumangs as though they were facing a formidable foe. Even a peak mid-stage foundation establishment expert had become their food, much less their meager strength. If they did not form a defensive formation, they probably wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. After a while, two black shadows shot out from the forest, pincer attacking the group from the left and right. It was the two Gumangs they'd seen just now. Lang Lang. Lin Yi shouted as he faced the Gomang on his left. At the same time, Lang Lang faced the Gomang on his right in tacit understanding. Two fists couldn't fight four hands, and Lin Yi's strength was only at foundation establishment perfection, after all. He could handle one, but two at the same time was a different story. He needed Lang Lang to take the brunt of the attack. Otherwise, if Lingshan and the others were to face Gomang's ambush head-on, the consequences would be dire even with the formation. Chapter 52:19. How is this possible? Lang Lang couldn't help but be shocked. The ice-shattering aura was the basis of all her strength. If even her ice-shattering aura couldn't be of any use, then it would be very difficult for her to deal with this monster. Its feathers are too thick. Lingshan and the others quickly reminded her from behind. Unless Gomang charged in, they wouldn't dare to attack recklessly. They could only use this method to help. Lang Lang only reacted now. The opponent's feathers were very thick, and the outermost layer was as hard as armor. Even if she was hit by the ice-shattering palm, the ice-shattering aura wouldn't be able to penetrate her body. Naturally, it wouldn't have any substantial effect. Since hitting the wings was useless, then she'd change to other areas, especially those with sparse feathers. For example, the opponent's creepy human face. Lang Lang made up her mind and immediately used her ice-shattering palm to greet the opponent's face. Surprisingly, Gomang didn't even try to block it. Instead, He wore a very human-like smile on his face. When Lang Lang's ice-shattering palm was about to land on his face, he suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a green poisonous gas. Wherever the poisonous gas passed through, even the rocks were corroded into a bottomless hole. It was fortunate that Cold Lang's reaction was fast enough to withdraw her hand in time. She managed to avoid the green poisonous gas by a hair's breadth. This thing is too cunning. Everyone was dumbfounded. Although they knew that many spirit beasts had extraordinary intelligence, they tended to be straightforward. There weren't many that liked to scheme, and there were even fewer like Gomang, who held back his strength to backstab others. Lang Lang was also shocked. After witnessing the strength of the opponent's poisonous gas, she immediately gave up on the idea of attacking the opponent's face. The opponent's face wasn't a weakness that could be exploited, but a trap that was meant to lure people into it. For a moment, Lang Lang was at a loss. Fortunately, she had the strength of a foundation establishment perfection. As long as she was careful, Gomang wouldn't be able to hurt her. However, Lang Lang had only exchanged a few blows with it when Gomang suddenly changed his strategy. After sweeping her away with a claw, he pounced towards Ling Shan and the others. Fuck! Chen Tian and the others were startled. This guy had a human face after all, he knew how to pick on the weak. What a cunning bastard. Everyone, hold on. Ling Shan shouted. While the others were shocked, they didn't panic. With her as the vanguard, they withstood Gomang's first attack. In terms of strength, Ling Shan was second only to Lin Yi and Cold. She'd broken through again after the tournament, and was now a foundation establishment practitioner at the peak. Even so, she couldn't withstand a single blow from someone like Gomang. She wasn't alone, however. Lin Yi had them practice a defensive formation that could withstand attacks far beyond what they could handle. Even a foundation establishment practitioner wouldn't be able to break through in a short amount of time, just like Gomang. Gomang didn't. He didn't expect that surprised. He. Lang he. That it G Lang it. Gomang it. At this moment, Lang Lang had come up to them once again. The attack just now had really scared her out of her wits. Fortunately, Ling Shan and the others had put up a good performance. Otherwise, she would have felt guilty for the rest of her life if someone had died from her sneak attack. Gomang repeated the same trick. He turned around and launched a claw attack. His legs were long and slender, and his claws were extremely sharp. When his speed reached a certain level, the threat he posed was no small matter. Even a perfected foundation establishment expert like Cold would not dare to take it head-on. Moreover, Cold had never been the type of person to fight head-on with brute force. But this time, Lang Lang didn't choose to retreat. Instead, she gritted her teeth and blocked the attack with shattering ice palm. She didn't have a choice, she didn't dare to retreat anymore. Otherwise, she'd give the enemy a second chance to ambush Ling Shan's group. Although the first time was a close shave, the second time might be different. Puff! Lang Lang spat out a mouthful of blood abruptly. It was not a pleasant thing to use one's weakness to attack the enemy's strength. From the moment she realized it, it was inevitable for her to spit blood after getting injured. Jili Gulu. Gomang paused, realizing that he couldn't retract his claw in time. Instead, Lang Lang had a death grip on it, and as time went on, a bone-chilling coldness spread from his claw to the rest of his body. His entire body was showing signs of freezing. Great! Nice job, Lang Lang sis. Ziyu was overjoyed and wanted to rush up to help. She wanted to let this scary thing have a taste of her instant attack. No! Cold and the others were all shocked by this rash action of hers. Gomang was only affected by her ice aura, it wasn't enough to freeze him completely. With Ziyu's strength, it was suicide for her to charge at him. At this moment, Gomang turned around and spat out a green poisonous gas from its mouth. Cold could muster the courage to take its claws head-on, but she did not dare to touch this thing. She quickly let go of its claws and dodged sideways. Just a little bit of this poisonous gas could kill a person. Ji Li Gu Lu. Gomang's face flashed with savagery, and after forcing Leng Leng back, he pounced at Lingshan's group once more. This time, his target was even more clear. It was Ziyu, who was standing a little too rashly. Ziyu, get back. Lingshan and the others panicked. Even if they were in a defensive formation and could share most of the pressure, they still needed someone to be the main pillar. This person could be Lingshan, Wu Qintian, or even Yu Bing, but it couldn't be anyone else. After all, only the three of them had broken through after the tournament, and the others, including Ziyu, were still at Foundation establishment initial phase. They couldn't take on this responsibility at all. But Ziyu's position was too rash, and they could either push her out of the formation or force her to be the main pillar. Either way, Ziyu would be in extreme danger, especially since she was Gomang's first target. The results were unimaginable. Chapter 52:20. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Gomang looked as if his scheme had succeeded. His wings immediately swept over with a strong gust of wind. Even a perfected Foundation establishment expert would not be able to withstand the might of his wings, much less an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. Ziyu was completely stunned, her mind blank as she watched the wings get closer and closer. A weird thought popped up in her head. Is this the feeling of death? What are you talking about? Lingshan's voice sounded in her head as she jumped out of the formation and stood in front of her without hesitation. How old are you? You want to die already? It's too early. Chen Tian appeared in front of her as well. Yeah. Yu Bing was the same. At this point, the only ones who could react in time were the three of them, who were at the peak of the early stage of Foundation establishment. All of you. Ziyu felt her nose go sour. She knew very well that this was all her fault, and even if she died, it was her own fault. But now, Lingshan and the other two were standing behind her without hesitation. There was only one result to this, trading a life for a life, 3 lives for 1 life for hers. Without the formation, Lingshan and the other two wouldn't be able to survive Gomang's attacks even if they worked together. At the end of the day, they were only Foundation establishment practitioners. Gomang saw this and changed his target from Ziyu to Lingshan and the other two. Everyone here was his prey, it was just changing the way he ate them. However, at this moment, an extremely powerful bone-chilling cold erupted from behind him, accompanied by a cold voice, Ice Prison Mirror, shatter. 1.5 months after the competition, she didn't do anything else. Even if she was already at Foundation perfection, even if she had the supreme golden core Lin Yi gave her, she didn't have the slightest intention of forcefully breaking through to the golden core stage. After all, she had just become a legend in the competition, breaking through to the golden core stage would only deplete her reserves. Even if she succeeded, she'd just fade into the crowd. Leng Leng, naturally, wouldn't do something stupid like that, and so she only did one thing, that was to train her trump card, prison drawing. Of course, she also had an even stronger skill, Ice Prison Mirror Break. The Ice Prison Mirror shattered. Even Duanmuyu, who had unleashed his full strength back then, could not withstand it. Naturally, it was the same for the Gomang in front of him. He collapsed on the spot, becoming a human-faced, bird-bodied ice sculpture. Lingshan and the others looked at each other, their eyes filled with fear and relief. If Leng Leng didn't do it in time, they'd all become Gomang's food. On the other side, Lin Yi was facing Gomang alone. Unexpectedly, he wasn't able to kill it instantly. This Gomang was very cunning. It basically never attacked with its full strength. It would always move around to restrain Lin Yi, and its speed was extremely fast. Lin Yi couldn't finish it off with the 5 elements' murderous aura. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let Cold and the others fall into such a dangerous and bitter battle. This guy is a little troublesome. Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. Although this Gomang's strength wasn't at the level of Golden Core, it was definitely above most of the Foundation Establishment Perfection Masters. Of course, it wouldn't be a big deal if that was all. Lin Yi could handle it, but because he was worried about the third Gomang that hadn't appeared, he didn't dare to stray too far away from the others. Otherwise, he'd be in big trouble if he fell into the trap of luring the tiger away from the mountain. However, this would put him in a bind. The cunning Gomang only used all sorts of long-range attacks, but never a direct confrontation. Lin Yi couldn't even attack it, let alone kill it. When the 5 elemental killing aura was useless, Lin Yi's only move was Electric Arc. It wasn't hard to hit the Gomang with the speed of the Electric Arc, but the problem was that the opponent wasn't the Fire Bat King, but the Gomang that surpassed Foundation Establishment perfection. The power of the Electric Arc could only tickle it, but it would be naive to think that it could kill it. Poof! That Gomang shot a green poisonous gas from afar. It didn't even bother to see if it was effective. After it was done, it turned around and retreated without any hesitation. What the hell? Lin Yi was helpless. Other than sending an electric arc to slightly numb it, there was nothing else he could do. Unless he unleashed his extreme butterfly micro-steps to catch up to it. As long as he could close the distance between them to within 3 steps, the Gomang could forget about avoiding his 5 elemental killing aura. Unfortunately, he dared not take the risk because he knew that the third Gomang was waiting for an opportunity to strike. If Leng Leng was in perfect condition, it would be fine. As long as she could hold on for a bit, Lin Yi would be able to play along even if he knew that the Gomang was trying to lure him away. He had enough confidence that he could get back before anything happened to them, but Leng Leng had used up a lot of energy from using the ice prison mirror. She didn't even have the ability to protect herself. Ling Shan and the others helped Leng Leng sit down to recover as they looked at each other. They could see the predicament Lin Yi was in, but there was nothing they could do. After all, they didn't even have the strength to act tough. Otherwise, they'd end up like Ziyu and drag everyone else into danger. These Gomang are all crazy. Shouldn't they know when to retreat after suffering a loss? What's the point of them sticking to us like this? Chen Tian said helplessly. That's true, he looks like he's very smart. Why would a smart person do something like that? Yu Bing and the others were confused as well. Ling Shan thought about it and spoke up, they're trying so hard to keep us here, don't tell me they have reinforcements. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. He'd been keeping an eye on the third Gomang all this time and was only thinking of luring the tiger away from the mountain. He hadn't thought of this possibility. From the way the 3 Gomang moved in unison, it was obvious that they were existences that moved in groups. In that case, it was very likely that there was a 4th or 5th Gomang, or even more. Chapter 52-21. Ling Shan and the others nodded in unison, maintaining their defensive formation as they moved forward. Compared to staying in one spot, this was still a little risky, but compared to the possibility of them sitting on the ground and waiting for death, this risk was worth it. As soon as they started moving, the Gomang that had been clinging to Lin Yi all this while suddenly became a lot more intense. While it was still very careful to avoid a direct confrontation, it was clearly putting in more effort in its attacks, as if trying to stop the group from moving forward. Interesting. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes at the strange reaction. Boss, what did you find? Chen Tian asked. If I'm not wrong, this reaction proves two things, Lin Yi said thoughtfully. What two things? The others were confused. First, there's a high chance that they have reinforcements of the same species. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to keep bothering us. If they're the only two left, they should know that they can't do anything to us. Continuing wouldn't do them any good, and they might even get themselves killed, Lin Yi analyzed. This analysis was based on the premise that the Gomang had to have enough intelligence, or it wouldn't be possible if they were just driven by their animal instincts. Of course, from what they'd seen, the latter was very unlikely. Yes, it's very possible, the others nodded in agreement. Second, we need to be even more careful from now on, we might run into even greater danger ahead, something even more ferocious than these Gomangs, Lin Yi said solemnly. What do you mean? The others didn't understand. Think about it, if there aren't any other powerful beings ahead, do you think we'd be able to shake off the Gomang with our speed? Lin Yi asked. Impossible. The others shook their heads. They were walking on the ground, after all, and their speed wasn't fast at all. Gomang, on the other hand, was flying in the air. It was a piece of cake for it to keep an eye on them. If that's the case, why would they be so nervous? They could have gotten a Gomang to follow us unhurriedly and wait for their reinforcements to arrive before attacking. There's only one reason why it's trying so hard to hinder our advance. Once we advance a certain distance, we'll no longer be under their control, Lin Yi said indifferently. That means that if we go any further, we won't be in their territory anymore, but in the territory of another existence. Chen Tian realized. Yes, and that existence must be extremely strong, at least on par with these Gomang, maybe even stronger. Yu Bing nodded. Ugh. Ling Shan couldn't help but smile bitterly. Doesn't that mean we've gone out of the wolf's den into the tiger's den? That is true. Trials are always like this. There are dangers everywhere. Everyone will slowly get used to it, comforted Lin Yi with a smile. But big brother Lin Yi, aren't you nervous at all? If it's something even stronger than these Gomang, wouldn't it be more dangerous for us to keep going? Ziyu couldn't help but ask. In theory, yes. Lin Yi nodded, but we have to go forward if we want to go to the river of consciousness. No matter how dangerous it is, we have to muster up our courage and go through it. We can't just give up halfway and become deserters, can we? I don't want to be a deserter. Ziyu shook her head, and the others had the same attitude. Since they'd decided to participate in this trial, they'd already prepared themselves to die. If they couldn't even handle this, how were they supposed to be able to hold their own in the future? How were they supposed to be Lin Yi's true helpers? All right, let's continue then. Lin Yi nodded, pleased. He wouldn't force anyone, and it wasn't a big deal if someone wanted to back out now. It was human nature, and he wouldn't hesitate to send them back to the teleportation formation with the others before setting off again. The group continued forward, and Gomang's attacks became more and more intense, but it didn't stop them at all. After all, it didn't dare to attack them head-on, or Lin Yi's killing intent would be enough to send it on its way. After a while, Lin Yi's eyelid twitched. I sensed the location of the third Gomang. From the beginning, he had only been able to sense two Gomangs within the range of his perception. He was unable to lock onto the third one's location. Although he couldn't eliminate the possibility of it using some special means to hide, he could now confirm that it was chasing from behind. Furthermore, there was another big guy behind it. Where is it? The group asked. Right behind us, and it brought an even stronger one. It doesn't look friendly. Lin Yi frowned. Before he could do anything else, the Gomang that had been harassing them from the start suddenly charged at them. It was coming at them fiercely, finally coming at them head-on. A cloud of green gas came at them from a tricky angle this time, and it was much closer than before. If Lin Yi dodged to the side like before, the people behind him would be caught in the crossfire, but if he didn't, who knew what would happen to him if he got in contact with it? It wouldn't be a good ending, that's for sure. Careful, Lin Yi bro. Ziyu and the others warned. But Lin Yi wasn't panicking at all. Instead, he had a long-awaited smile on his face. With his strength, no one below the Golden Course stage could pose a real threat to him. If that Gomang kept harassing them like this, he really wouldn't be able to do anything. But now that it was coming at him head-on, how many lives did it have? Accompanied by a deep dragon roar, the 5 elemental killing aura immediately attacked. In the blink of an eye, it met the terrifying green poisonous gas head-on. In the end, the green poisonous gas collapsed upon contact, unable to withstand a single blow. Then, the Gomang was taken care of as well. The human-faced head was penetrated by the 5 elemental killing aura, leaving a huge bloody hole as it collapsed to the ground. In front of the killing intent of the 5 elements, the green poison gas was just child's play. Dodging it carefully would save one's life, but fighting it head-on was suicide. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.